Hey, race fans, Hall of Famer Darrell Waltrip here. You know, it's time to drop the green flag on another edition of Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by F.E.A.T. So, hey, pull those belts tight one more time. Here's my buddy Hermie Sadler and Senator Bill Stanley. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's see what they have to say, boys and girls.
I'm Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm leaning right.
I'm former NASCAR driver and Fox Sports analyst Hermie Sadler, and I am turning left, leaning right and turning left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by F.E.A.T.
Morning, buddy.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How's things in the big city?
The big city of Manita, it's doing just fine. We're seeing fall weather here. We're getting ready for maybe the remnants of Hurricane Ian as it comes ashore this weekend. I think that's going to ruin our plans for the Smart Tour at Motor Mile. What do you think?
Yeah, it ain't looking too good. You and I are supposed to have some meet and greets and some events with our sponsor, F.E.A.T, and some of the operators in the area on Friday. It looks like that might be in jeopardy, but in life in general, and certainly in racing, Mother Nature always wins. So we'll have the race at Motor Mile when Mother Nature says she's ready to have it, whether, you know, the course of the storm may change. We could have it on time Saturday, could be Sunday. If not, there'll be another rescheduled date, and we'll adjust accordingly. But we can only control what we can control, as you know.
We've already lost one race in the Smart Series of the four that were left. This one has to be run. I think, you know, one of the considerations that the Smart director is putting into play is actually putting it at the end of the series instead of having the championship run race at Tri-Counties. It's going to be probably maybe at the Motor Mile if this gets continued, not canceled. So we're looking forward to getting back on the track, but it's certainly it's no fun to race, and no one will see you race if you've got tropical depression coming over top of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So it's a wait-and-see game. It's Tuesday for us, but when you're hearing this, it's Thursday. You're probably going to know exactly where that tropical depression is coming up the East Coast, and we pray for the people in Florida, in Tampa, and Naples that may see the brunt of this storm. It looks pretty big, Hermie. It's going to be a whopper, and up the west side of the coast of Florida could bring some storm surge. So we pray for everybody there. Be safe. Get out of the way. It's not worth riding it out just because your property, your irreplaceable property, can be replaced.
We have a third member of the broadcast team today, but before we get there, I want to mention that our sponsor, F.E.A.T, is an entertainment company that develops gaming software that players love to play and can use their skills to win every single time. Plus, these games of skill provide vital revenue to keep family-owned businesses like bars, restaurants, convenience stores, and truck stops thriving. So we really appreciate F.E.A.T for giving us this platform, as well as the platform with the Sadler Stanley Racing Modified team that we are hoping to take into the western part of the state this weekend. If not, we'll do it when Mother Nature is ready. So thanks to F.E.A.T for the opportunity.
Yeah, and they're great. They support small communities where these racetracks are. They support the racetracks. They support the race car drivers. They support the race car owners. They're really, really into supporting small businesses, and that's why we're into them as well. And you're right. We have back with us after a short stint in the Mecklenburg County lockup, our favorite councilman, the best of the best of South Hills politicos. You know, don't forget that phone call that we all received on our cell phones that one fateful night after the burn pile when the town council wanted to arrest our favorite guy. This is what we heard.
You have an incoming call from
Shep Moss,
an inmate at the Mecklenburg County Correctional Facility. To accept this call, please press 1.
We pressed 1.
That sounds great.
Ladies and gentlemen, our sidekick is back after a short vacay. Shep Moss. Welcome, Shep. How are you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I finally realized I did not look as good as orange as I thought I would.
But you got some free shower shoes with it, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. 3 hots and a cot at the Crossbar Motel. So
Well, it also took me a little while to find your golf ball from last week, but I finally did, and so now I'm back in action.
that happened a lot. We can talk about that as well, because the interview that we're going to do is from that golf tournament that benefited a very fine organization, F.E.A.T, that helps parents and teachers in the communities with children with autism. But yeah, Shep was chasing my golf ball. Really appreciate his help there. His, you could see, because it was only 8 yards in front of the tee box. Mine usually ended up in the woods. So Shep, just to keep us up to date on the burn pile controversy in South Hill, every one of our listeners is waiting to see. We had kind of teased it before when you weren't here. It seems like now they're back on the hunt for the FOIA. What
He
happened?
really likes when you say the burn pile controversy.
Yeah, I just feel very comfortable.
Burn pile gate.
Where
How's
the
that?
edge on?
Burn pile gate. So get us a quick bumper sticker version of what's going on. You look, like you say, you look like you're either bonded out or haven't been arrested yet, but they're not giving up on you, are they, Shep?
Well, it doesn't appear to be. Pretty quiet since the last meeting. Our next meeting's in 2 weeks, but I have a sneaky suspicion they're still going to push the FOIA issues. So we'll, they still want me to release the source of who let the cat out of the bag, who sent me the pictures of the documents being burned. And, I'm just a firm believer under FOIA exemption that I'm a whistleblower, that these people and citizens were acting in good faith. We've been preaching ever since 9/11. If you see something, say something. These citizens did their civic duty in doing so. And now they want to burn them at the stake, so to speak, for doing so.
And the fire is getting higher, getting hotter. So stand your ground, stand up for the citizens, and especially those that are trying to right wrongs. And so we're behind you 100%, Shep. So,
And I got a great attorney representing me too. So.
I know. I know him. He's a good guy. Yeah. Yeah. After all that free advice on the phone, yeah, you went and paid some other dude. So you're welcome.
So you did mention it briefly that our interview today, or our special guest on the interview portion of the podcast today, is a special one. And we taped this last Friday at the F.E.A.T, which is Families Embracing Autism Together golf fundraiser in South Hill, Virginia. Our guests are Mandi Calhoun, who her and her husband Brian have 3 beautiful kids, the oldest of which is a son named Bailey, who is on the autism disorder spectrum. And my wife Angie made her first appearance ever on the podcast, and you don't want to miss today's interview because it is very insightful. It's very emotional, as Mandi and Angie, as well as you and I, Senator Stanley, talk about our kids and the fight to create awareness and programs for kids and young adults with autism. It's a very, very informative, emotional interview / educational session of this podcast. I think our listeners will really enjoy.
I have to agree with you. In fact, when we had finished the interview, I looked at Brad Tuesday, our executive producer, otherwise known as Chad Monday, to his parents. And he looked at me and said, that was the best interview we've done. And we've done a lot of great interviews. I mean, even last week's Kyle Petty interview, I thought we couldn't top it. But the discussion that we had and that you're about to listen to is so important because it gives a parent's perspective. The highs, the lows, the triumphs, the travails, everything runs the gamut of emotion in terms of having not just to deal and raise an autistic child, but to deal with the system that sometimes you expect is out there to help, and quite frankly, is a bigger impediment than it should be. And it really it got my brain going. In fact, Brad's my legislative aide. That's his part-time job, one of my legislative aides. And we walked out to the car, and our brains were just moving with, okay, what can we do? What can the government do to get better, to make better educational opportunities and to work with the parents? That always seems to be an issue we've talked about. We may even talk about it a little bit today in our opening segment here. of why does it always have to be a conflict between the school that thinks it knows better and the parent who actually does know better in terms of the decision-making and the rearing of the kids? Why can't there be more collaboration instead of confrontation? And it's never really the parent, although the school might blame it to be. It's really the school that says, we're only going to offer this level. We're not willing to be creative and offer this level. And we're going to hear stories today about parents being creative, about parents pushing back, making demands of our government system, even at the local level, at the school level, in order to make a difference for their children. And quite frankly, it was not only inspirational for me, but we've been thinking about legislation, how we can make a difference and change. So I was doing research over the weekend after that, and I was just doing whatever I could to find out how are we doing in terms of special education and filling the needs that are out there. I came across an article where Prince William County is 90 positions short. That's one of our more populated counties. 90 positions short. That equals at least one educator in special ed, a special education for special needs students in every school in Prince William County, elementary to high school. That's shocking that they can't fill those jobs. And that's leaving the child in the cold, out in the cold. And that means we're failing as an education system, something we pour billions of taxpayer dollars here in Virginia into, and we've got to do better. And that article also said, basically, you can, as a benchmark, probably find the same problems in most every counties, and it's even a bigger problem in rural counties. So, listen to this very special episode of Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, because it's going to open your eyes. It's going to teach you in ways that it taught me about things that I really didn't know, and hopefully it'll spur you to action as it spurred me to action as well.
I also want to report that the golf team of Shep Moss and Hermie and Senator Stanley and the Honorable David Sneed, we went around the South Hill Country Club in a respectable 12 under par. I found out after we had left that we ended up first place in the first flight. So that was a good round of golf for us. And on behalf of all four of us, the prize money that we won, we donated it back to the F.E.A.T organization that was raising money at the event. I do have some trophies, or Mandi Calhoun has a trophy for each of us that I'll be getting out to everybody. But I mean, for a great cause. But when you can do something for a great cause and have fun, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but we had a blast all the way from before we even teed off to one of the funniest things that would only be funny to us four dumbasses, the video of all of us putting our golf clubs back in the cars. We happened to even make fun of that.
Like a glove.
Yeah. I hurled
Like
mine.
a glove.
I hurled mine at about 8 feet and it made it into the back.
Well, if we'd have had a little better music, maybe we could have finished 13 under. And that would have flighted us right out of the money. So It was perfect.
Yeah, the DJing, got a little old, but my favorite part was not just laughing with you guys. I mean, if you guys are a bunch of weirdos, and I love it. It taught me so much about how Hermie was raised, where he comes from, and that he's not alone in who he is as a human being. But I met the hairiest dude on the planet. I mean, there's a guy out there, and I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but he wouldn't.
I'll say this. His name is Andy Walker from Lawrenceville, Virginia, and he is a podcast listener. So, Andy, you got a shout out.
He's a great guy. He's got gray hair on top, and then he's got the blackest. His hair must have been black when he was young. Hairiest arms and legs I've ever seen on a human being. If just for men, the surgery that they do to put hair back on somebody's head, he could cultivate. It's like acreage of hair that he could donate to help other men with black hair put hair back on their head. Yeah.
So he could work for Bosley.
Yeah, dude, these legs were so damn hairy. I was fixated on him all night. I mean, I'd see him like a hole across my. I was like, look, you can see him from here. Look at all that
I'm just glad you used the word dude when you explained him instead of the word you were using during the golf tournament.
Yeah. Well, that's what a shot of fireball would do to you on a golf course, I guess, right? But no, and he was a great guy, and we talked after the tournament and joked and laughed, and every single person there was not only funny, hilarious, and a pleasure to meet. But
Yeah, we hadn't even got to the number 3 tee box yet, and Senator Stanley looks at me and says, "Hermie, now I understand a whole lot more about why you act the way you do."
And we started on number 2.
It was funny, and it was a great time. So thanks for inviting me. I know my contributions were minimal at best. I had not played golf in a year. The last time I played golf was with you, Hermie. So, it was, but it was such fun, and Snyder was so much fun too. And what a great guy. And I really enjoyed listening to his music whenever our DJ, Shep Moss, would put on his music. It was enjoyable.
What was the DJ's name?
Shep Moss. Shep Moss. Shep Moss. What is your DJ company? Because I know I saw some. I think it's Party Time, and it was out on Facebook. Trying to book some fall weddings. Why don't you give a plug to the old Party Time?
Party Time Music, 35 years.
All right, get closer to the mic, Shep, because you sound
35 years, Party Time Music.
35 years.
On Facebook. Facebook is Party Time Music, DJ Shep Moss.
And you go get him, and you'll want him because he plays all the hits, even in a golf cart. You feel like you're at a wedding reception.
Are you ready to lean right?
Sure, let's do some lean right. I'm going to try to do some quick hits here because a lot of things, and it's all Virginia today, and because I want to get to your turning left moments because I want to talk about that Texas race. What a race that was, but I got 3 things to talk about today. You may have heard that before Governor Youngkin, the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, was in, when there was a majority in the House and the Senate and the governor's mansion, we had passed, I voted no, a law that said that all school divisions had to pass a inclusive transgender policy. Oh, and by the way, this is brought to you by Charlie's Waterfront Cafe in Farmville, Virginia. So they wanted this inclusive policy that would acknowledge transgenderism in high schools and would then also make accommodations and give special rights to transgender students. That included in the policies that were then adopted by Governor Northam's administration, privacy of the student from the parent, if the parent didn't agree with the change of sexual gender by the student. Also mandated that basically the integration of sports between men and women, that if a man identified as a woman, he could play on a woman's team, that if there was traveling for that team or even like overnight for sometimes, as you see, school trips, that the student who had decided that may have been born as a man and transferred, and decided that they now transgendered into a girl would be allowed to stay in hotel rooms with the gender that they now identified with. That caused some outrage and some parental rebellion to say, wait a minute, this is not the right thing. We talked about this, about Scott Smith's, that kind of transgender policy that Loudoun County had in place, was trying to make even more liberal, at least contributed to the attack on his daughter in a woman's bathroom by a guy who, for that day, identified as a woman and was wearing a skirt. And so Governor Youngkin came back and said, wait a minute, now that I'm in control of the Department of Education, I'm going to I'm going to change this policy. We're going to work within the law that's passed, but we're going to create some new policy measures that are more inclusive but respectful of parents' rights. And so the Virginia Department of Education, under Governor Youngkin's watch, made a new policy replacing the old one that basically was radical in terms of pronouns and in terms of use of the bathroom. If I'm born a male but decide I'm a female, I can go use the woman's bathroom in a high school. And so the principles were these that Youngkin has put forth, and right now we're having a public comment period. First, one, and the most important one that is also enshrined in our code, parents have the right to make decisions with respect to their children, and that the policy should reflect that. Schools shall represent parents' values and beliefs. That's another policy. The third policy is schools shall defer to parents to make the best decisions with respect to their children. And that includes, but is not limited to, that if there is a change in the gender identification made by the school, it is only made with the consent and information being given to the parent, and then the parent or parents consent to that change occurring. Schools shall keep the students informed about their children's well-being. Another principle of Youngkin's Virginia Department of Education change in policy on the transgender students, that schools shall serve the needs of all students equally, not giving or granting special rights to one over another just because of gender identification. And part of their principles in this new policy was that schools should, as I said just earlier, shall partner with parents and shall respect all students. So basically what you see in these new model policies that are before and are submitted to public comment are opportunities for parents to interact with the teachers and the staff and the school divisions in ways that are helpful, treating all students equally, not granting special rights. Well, now we're having public education and comments, and what we're seeing is the left is coming out in full force. So in public comment period, you can find that at the Virginia Regulatory Town Hall. Make your comment. The comment period's open, I believe, for 10 days. 30 days. So you have plenty of time to make comments. But here are some of the comments. So Brad pulled the bad ones. I'm going to read this one and blank it out. I love Fairfax County public school policy that allows me to shower with girls in the locker room, showing off my blank. I also encourage the girls to touch it. These are the public comments. Either they're not taking it very seriously, or here's another one. Nazis are very cool with treating, these are the public comments we're getting right now. Nazis are very cool with treating trans people like blank. Did you know they also had similar reporting systems for queer people? Why do you think all anti-trans rallies often have Nazi flags with swastikas being waved? Another stupid comment. Here's another comment from obviously a lefty out of Charlottesville. The 2021 policies, and they oppose this new policy. The 2021 policies have been celebrated by trans students and have made space for families to learn more about their children rather than to direct their lives in an autocratic way. That's the parents. Parents should not control every aspect of their child's education or well-being. We know it takes a village. That is exactly, the thinking of the schools and the school system is that you don't have control over your child. Well, let me tell you something. In Virginia law, you have control over your child until the age of 18. And this statement is just ridiculousness. So,
Well, Senator, all of those comments are ridiculous. And that's why we keep encouraging people on this podcast to get out in a grassroots effort and get involved at the local level, from the school boards to the board of supervisors to the town councils. People have got to start standing up for their rights and their liberties and morals and ethics and all of that kind of good stuff. That's just what you just read is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and it gets worse. I mean, I could continue to read this, but ultimately, guys,
Please
I think
don't.
it really comes down. I'm not going to. But I'll send them to you because you all should read them. And I encourage everybody to go on there and see exactly kind of the lunacy of the left on this kind of stuff, and how far it will go. And really, that last comment that I read demonstrates exactly what they think, that they're in control of your children. That if your child suddenly, because in second grade, the teacher wants to teach everybody how many pronouns there are, and you can be a they, there, or they, there, or whatever. Suddenly, in second grade, very impressionable kids, well, that person has a new pronoun. I want a pronoun. And suddenly then they hide that from you, the parent, and then they're trying to do trans affirming educational opportunities based off of that. Then they're taking away the primacy of parenthood from you. And that is not what it's about. We don't give up our kids to the government or to the tools and teachers of the government for them to indoctrinate our children. We're the ones that give them values. I've said this on the podcast before. Teachers are there to teach children how to think, not what to think. Herm, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this has been an ongoing dialogue, and I look at it as people on the left have yet to realize two things. Number one, yet to realize or accept the fact that Glenn Youngkin won this election. They will not accept that. Number two, they fail to realize that one of the main reasons he won the election was his continuous statements about parents having a right to know what was going on with their kids in schools. And that goes from transgender policies to what's being taught to the whole experience. The left thinks that the school should be in charge and control every aspect of your child's life when they're at school, and the parents don't need to know. And Youngkin, once this issue became kind of to the forefront, he seized it, stayed on it, hammered it home, and people showed up to the ballot box to vote for Governor Youngkin for many reasons. But one of those reasons was because he continued to be adamant that parents need to know what's going on in the lives of their kids when they're at school, and they have a right to know and a right to be involved, and from every aspect of that child's experience is so impressionable, during those school age years. And he continues to hammer that home, and the left continues to try to ignore it, and it's doing nothing but digging them a deeper and deeper hole.
What I don't understand, just last week we had, thank God it was false alarm, but we had some active shooter situations that, again, turned out to be false in Mecklenburg County, and I think over in Lunenburg County as well. Well, the parents were in an upper age because they didn't get the information and what they thought was quick enough. They didn't like how things were handled in certain aspects of that. But, why does the government think it's okay the parents to know that, but not know what the kids are being taught, or, how they are being, in some instances, brainwashed at school? It's just mind-boggling, the double standard that's going on right now.
You're exactly right, Chap. And remember, it's their view is we're being extreme, that we're extremists. If we believe in life, if we're pro-life, or we believe in the Second Amendment, we're extremists. We're extremist MAGA people. And we must, and it's not just to have a different opinion. Remember what they're trying to do now. We're even seeing with Merrick Garland in the Attorney General's office, the federal Attorney General's office, is that they just raided a guy's house, a pro-life advocate who hands out or counsels people outside an abortion clinic, only voluntarily, was jostled. His child was being verbally abused by a pro-choice, pro-abortion advocate. He pushed the guy away. State charges were brought. Those were dismissed. And what happened? 20 some odd federal agents seized upon his house, executing a misdemeanor warrant under federal law to arrest this guy with his kids in the house, traumatizing the kids, overuse of the federal government's power. So you become the enemy. What that shows is, and don't think it's a one-time deal. This is now, if you don't believe what they force down your throat in this virtue signaling atmosphere, then you are one, extreme, and two, an enemy of the state, and they will use state or federal power against you. I mean, that is Cuba. That is not the United States of America. So this is a flashpoint, and it's funny because it's not like Youngkin's policies are, not only are we not going to handle transgenderism, it deals with it. It says when the parents are involved and these are the decisions that are made, and they're made with the parent involved with the school, then those accommodations can be made. Some accommodations can be made. Not all the radical ones they wanted before. And basically the principles that I read you, the parent should be involved. The parent should have the say. The parent's primacy in the raising of the kids are part of that, collaboration with school. That's extreme. Shep, that is extreme to these guys. How dare, and that one quote, how dare we allow parents to have a say in their kids? Because once you put them on that bus, man, they're the government's. And the government's going to tell them how to think, what to think, and going to dominate them, and you have no say. And they come home one day. They left as a kid in the second grade who should not be thinking about sexuality, and then they come home that next day because of the teacher and say, "Hey, mom and dad, I want to be a they there." And now you've introduced a 6 or 7-year-old to a whole host of things that, quite frankly, are not in the plan of my parental raising. I mean, my youngest son is 11. We're not talking about this stuff, and identifying you and me because we're straight. Used to be straight. Now we're cis. See, they've even given us a new title, cisgender. Cis? I mean, CIS. I mean, this whole categorization of people separates, divides.
Well,
Remember,
Senator, two things. When you go back to, again, the information, the government, they say it's okay to release the information if you have an active shooter, that should be knowledge for the parent. But they don't want to release, because that's public safety, but they don't want to have you to have any say-so or release any of the information that they're trying to teach your child. To me, that's public safety as well. They've gotten so extreme. To me, they are putting in jeopardy the safety and the mentality of a lot of these young students. And when that government comes after you, as you're talking about, the average person has to remember the government is dealing with essentially unlimited resources and unlimited coffers to shut you down. And it's very, very hard to stand up and fight against that. But we have to now as a society. We've gotten so far to the left, we've got to start standing up and fighting, really at all cost.
and it's the mindset, guys, of the school system, of some of the teachers, and certainly certainly some of the upper management, the administration of these schools, that the parents are the threat to the children.
Right.
For wanting to raise their kids with morals, values, virtues, maybe even in a Judeo-Christian atmosphere. Maybe what's next? Going to church? Because obviously they think all Christians, if you believe in the Christian faith, are bigots, and bigots are extreme MAGA. And so therefore, what's next? They're going to call social services because you took your kid to Methodist church? I mean, there's no end result until we stand up and say, no, that's enough. You've had your fun. Otherwise, we see a continuing decay of society. And that's where they get you when you're young. That's where they get you in the school system. So a very interesting discussion going on in the Commonwealth of Virginia, a discussion that we need to have. And certainly, I urge all parents to stand up. Do not go back to being complacent. This is a time when we say enough.
And remember the ballot box. That's why we've got to have good candidates, strong morals, strong ethics, strong beliefs. And we've got to take it back at the ballot box.
That's right. And, okay, so my other quick hit, I know that wasn't so quick, but Delegate Don Scott, guy I know, guy I like, been friendly with. We've worked on legislation together. He's the minority leader in the House of Delegates, released an opinion in the Virginian Pilot, opinion titled, MAGA Republicans Are a Threat to Public Safety. Here we go again. His opening sentence needs to be read. MAGA Republican Party is a threat to public safety. The MAGA GOP wants you to believe it's the party of law and order. But in Virginia, it has opposed meaningful gun safety measures at every turn. This party has positioned itself as the unconditional champion of law enforcement, yet its members increasingly use violent rhetoric that led to the attacks on Capitol police officers on January 6th. This party no longer has an ideological compass beyond pure and undefiled allegiance to the MAGA ideology. Now, I like Don Scott, but he's nuts. So now, if you believe in one of the amendments to the Constitution, you're a danger. You're an extremist. And he goes on to say, basically, that in this opinion, that because MAGA Republicans, or any Republican or any conservative, believes in the Second Amendment, that you're not pro law enforcement and you're a threat. He goes on to say, quote, the Republicans are not a pro-law enforcement party, which is bullshit. It is the MAGA party, and it poses a real danger to the country. They've already denied and excused an attempt to violently overturn the results of what was most secure presidential election in American history. I mean, come on, man. This kind of rhetoric, I mean, somebody's got to be the adult in the room and tone this down. I mean, so again, I'm an extremist because I believe in the Second Amendment that was written by our founding fathers. Am I next going to be an extremist because I believe in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, or freedom of association, separation of church and state? I mean, where does it stop? Now it's MAGA Republicans, MAGA. See, they want to always put, a moniker on you. Cis MAGA Republicans, not trans MAGA Republicans. I mean, come on, man. Give me a break. This is stupid. And there's no reason to put something out there like this. And basically saying whatever happened to Uvalde, that tragedy, that horrible shooting in school, is the fault of MAGA Republicans because they're against gun control. Man. And, look,
Why don't they speak against, the hundreds of deaths that happen in places like Chicago every week?
doesn't fit the narrative. Why would they? And that's African-American males, mostly African-American families.
Crime on each other.
Yeah. Right. And it's just because it doesn't fit the narrative. Look, Republicans are not for putting guns or illegal guns out on the street. They're not for having people who are convicted of felonies or cannot possess a firearm to possess a firearm. We are protecting of the lawful possession of firearms for those law-abiding citizens as was intended by the Constitution. That does not proliferate gun violence in Chicago. Quite frankly, the failed Democrat policies in Chicago, the lax on crime, the defund the police, you've had Chicago police officers retiring by droves because they're not supported by their liberal government and the mayor there. And then they want to say, well, it's all because of the Second Amendment. That again is just the most juvenile way of thinking. And here we go again. But they're really good at calling you names, calling you out. And the minute you fight back, you go, oh, you're a bigot. You're a misogynist. You're a radical. You're extreme. You need to be arrested. I don't get it. So thoughts, Shep? What do you think? Here we have a new leader. Actually, he dispossessed the old speaker, Eileen Fillicorn, a lovely, wonderful person, from being the minority leader in the House of the Democrats. And I dare say I don't think she would have written something so crazy as this. But, we don't have, what you don't see are opinion pieces saying the left is, trying to overthrow the country. They're trying to change our society fundamentally, but not overthrow the country. We don't say that.
They try to intimidate with insults instead of debating with policy. Not to get off topic, but just like the busloads of immigrants that they're sending to New York City. Well, now that they're putting them up there near the Bronx in one of the parks and at the beach, AOC has disappeared. It was fine once they're in Texas, not in her district, not in her area, but now they're sending them to New York. She's all but disappeared. It's that mentality of, I'm entitled to have the migrants here, but not in my backyard. And it's like Hermie said, they don't want to talk about the shootings in Chicago. They don't want to talk about the fentanyl. They don't want to talk about the drugs. That's coming across the border. Anything that doesn't fit the narrative, if you address it, they want to attack by intimidation, as you have pointed out, give you a acronym and shut you down by trying to embarrass you. And that's just not the way government and democracy is supposed to work.
Amen, brother. All right. So we all agree on that one. The last one's kind of an interesting story. It just happened over the weekend. I thought I'd bring it up because, we want to be fair to both and not, just talk about Democrats, but also talk about Republicans when they make the news here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We have two wonderful people running for a new House district that has been carved since redistricting, which includes the city of Galax, Carroll County, Floyd County, Patrick County, and a little bit of Henry County. I know both of them. I've found them to be very competent legislators. Delegate Ren Williams and Delegate Marie March were involved in a little dust-up, a little scuffle you guys might have heard about over the past weekend. And so, and of course, this appeared first on the cardinalnews.org website, a very good website that deals with very important issues in rural Virginia or the rest of Virginia other than Northern Virginia. And I'm just going to read the opening article paragraph, if I might, from Marcus Schmidt. Two Virginia lawmakers facing each other in a highly competitive nomination battle next year got off into a real-life confrontation at a Republican fundraiser in Wytheville Saturday, resulting in Delegate Marie March, Republican current delegate from Floyd, pressing criminal charges against Delegate Ren Williams, current Republican delegate of Patrick County, for assault and battery. According to the warrant, around 8:30 at the 9th Congressional District Gala, where Morgan Griffith, our congressman, was, March told law enforcement officers that Williams intentionally pushed/shoulder slammed her in front of a large group of people. Supposedly, Williams says, I was on my way out. My pregnant wife wanted to leave. It was a crowd. I was trying to get through the crowd. I unintentionally bumped into her. I apologized, kept moving. And then Delegate March went on to say that she had been shoulder slammed, swore out a warrant after giving a report to the police, and Delegate Williams was arrested. Now we've got an arraignment coming up, I think, sometime in November 24th, right around Thanksgiving. And so now these two are fighting each other in a primary. Now we'll be fighting each other in criminal court. Hermie, did you hear about this? I mean, I know somebody sent you the link.
Did. I quite frankly, I just think it's embarrassing. You and I have talked a lot over the last couple of months, certainly on this podcast, about my potential run for political office in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the 17th senatorial district seat. And obviously, if I do decide to go that route, there'll be a primary with that. And I told you a couple times, I know one of your favorite people in Virginia, certainly politics and really outside of politics, is Governor George Allen, as he is mine. And, there's been some things that have come up and been presented to me, or people coming after me since, I started having a discussion about running for office. Some are coming from the person that I may end up in a primary against next year, or actually, early next year. So one thing that Governor Allen has always said to me, for me to try to practice, is what he referred to as Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, which is don't talk disparagingly about fellow Republicans. In other words, in a perfect world, which we're not in a perfect world right now, but in a perfect world, there was a lot of talk about redistricting across Virginia. A lot of people are going to be put into districts with other Republicans in primaries. And Governor Allen basically was saying, in a perfect world, we would have the strongest possible Republican candidates coming out of each primary to give them the best chance to win in a general election. And so I'm going to do my best to abide by that and try to be positive, try to focus on the positives, and try to have whoever comes out of a potential primary that I may be in to be the strongest possible candidate to have the best chance to win a general election. And I hope before it's too late that these two candidates for the House of Delegates on the Republican side maybe decide to keep that in mind as well, so that we're not sending a damaged goods candidate into the general election next year.
Well, and I think, look, it's a very Republican district. They were drawn together into this district by redistricting. Almost half of the House of Delegates members, both Democrat and Republican, were drawn together. About the same in the Senate. So we've got a lot of these kind of contentious primaries. People that used to be on the same team are now fighting each other for the seat. I think, I look at this in a couple of ways. One, I like them both. They're both actually, that district is mostly in the district that I hope to run in the 7th, and perhaps get the nomination and be the senator for. They're both good legislators. They're both passionate. But sometimes, you see that passion turn into something that you really don't want it to, because you want to win so badly. You want that seat so badly. And you think you're right, that emotions get high and they bubble over. We've seen before, they've both been nipping at each other, pecking at each other back and forth. It seems to be escalating. We are 8 months away from a primary or a convention, a nominating process, which will determine who's going to be the nominee. You don't want, just as you said, the wounded person to come out of it, hobbling. But I do think the Republican would win even in that circumstance. But again, it gives fodder to those on the left. It gives fuel to them on the left to try to say, see, that's what Republicans are. And so maintaining integrity and your composure and your decorum at all times, I think, is very important, because it's important for the people you represent. I think this is going to polarize the region. You're either going to be pro-March or pro-Williams. I'm pro both of them, like both of them, know that both of them are very capable legislators and will be whoever gets the nomination, will support whoever gets the nomination. But as a lawyer, when I look at this, And now this morning, videotape, security camera footage was put out. As a lawyer, when I look at this, it all comes down to intent. An assault and battery, gentlemen, is an intentional touching of another person without that person's consent. It can come in the form of a punch. It can come in the form of a push. It can come in the form of, just a poke. That can be assault and battery. That can be a battery in the Commonwealth of Virginia. In these stories, Mr. Williams, or Delegate Williams, says, "Hey man, I was trying to get my pregnant wife out of this party. It was turning into a party. I was trying to leave. I bumped into her, unintentional. I apologized and I move on." She obviously has set forth that he intended to do it by his actions that she alleges occurred earlier in the evening, and also that he shoulder slammed her. So it's really going to be coming down to a matter of intent. If he intended to do it, if a court of law finds, the General District Court finds he was intentional, then he would be found guilty. If they found that he didn't intend to do it, then he'd been found not guilty. If they can't determine whether it's intentional or not intentional, then the tie goes to the defendant and he would be found not guilty. The problem is now their battle of ideals, which should be held at committee meetings, at fairs, at individually with the voter, are now going to be battled out in a court of law. Every single judge in that circuit is going to recuse themselves out of Withville. You're going to get a judge appointed by the Supreme Court. It's going to be a spectacle. The press is going to make it into a spectacle. And quite frankly, I just find that to be unnecessary. So I hope both of them can come together, maybe settle their differences without a court of law being enjoined to settle those differences for them. And we can get back onto the battlefield of ideas to make sure that the voter is especially informed on who the better candidate will be, and then to go out and vote for whomever that person of choice for that voter is.
In my view, Senator, if you are all running or planning to run for office, right now we're talking about the Commonwealth of Virginia, but to me, all Republicans should be on the same team. And when something like this happens, it's bad press, bad publicity, whatever you want to say, for all Republicans. Oh, that's how the Democrats will use it. They'll try to use it to speckle everybody that may be running for office as a Republican in Virginia. They'll try to throw shade at everybody over this one incident. So I hope these two, to your point, will realize that the bigger concern, the bigger picture is not about them two. It's about Republicans as a whole as we try to get the Commonwealth of Virginia back on track. And let's just be honest, I'm not picking sides. I don't know either one of them. But if I'm at a party or a gala or an event and someone else is there that I don't choose to like or don't choose to be around, I can find a way to exit the building without coming in contact with them. And so I'm just upset that this is going to go on and potentially bring, harm in the public court of public opinion. And I'll say the other side of it too. They've both chosen. There was contact made. She could have let it go. She didn't. I hope they get it resolved for the good of the Republican Party. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, and so, I hope cooler heads prevail. But I think you're right. This incident is going to try to be hung around other candidates. And in the Commonwealth of Virginia, in the General Assembly, because we're outnumbered by Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and Richmond, we have to be taken seriously, and we have to have a strong voice that is not only considered by the Northern Virginia elites and all that, but that we get things done. If we are too busy with intra-squad, fights, as we're having here, then that dilutes our ability to get things done. I just want both of them to kind of take a deep breath, go, hey, we resolved it, moved along, we're good. Now let's get back to saying why I'm the better candidate or why I'm the better candidate. And that way, if you diffuse a situation that ultimately, if it's played out in court, politically, I think, becomes a political football for the Dems to use in other races, maybe even all over the state. And we don't want that to happen. I think, remember, we all wear the same color jersey. These are two really good people who I respect very much. Wish they weren't fighting against each other. They're more powerful and effective if they were both in the House of Delegates together. But it is what it is. But hopefully this will quietly be resolved.
Yeah, nobody wins here, Senator. I mean, neither one of these candidates are going to win in the court of public opinion. The Republican Party is not going to win in the court of public opinion. So I hope the truth comes out. But outside of that, I hope they will decide to both get back to what's important, and that is letting the voters of that district know what they stand for and why, so they can make a good choice moving forward as to who should be the Republican nominee in that district.
I hope so too.
Senator,
Shep, does this get crazy over like that in South Hill? I mean, you got some elections coming up, some contesteds coming up in November, maybe.
Yes, and they're very contested. And, again, we don't have, in my situation, it's not Republican Democrat because we're not broken down that far on a local government running from a party, so to speak. But we do have old guard versus new guard. But getting back to these two candidates, I'm going to predict the one that shows leadership, the first one that puts this to bed will win that election because they will show some leadership. Yeah. Whichever one, and I don't know either one of the people. I don't know either one of them, never met them. But the one who will let it go first will show leadership, and I predict that's who will win that election.
Well, and I think both of them almost have to do this because if as a lawyer, I'm going to put my lawyer hat back on. If Marie March says, "Okay, look, let's, I'm going to be, the bigger person here, so I'm going to withdraw my warrant," the opponent, Mr. Williams, probably go, "Ha! See, that shows she was lying." So what's the motivation for her to be the bigger person? If he's going to say, "See, that proved that I was innocent," she used this as a political tactic and ploy. If both of them came together and resolved it, I think that's how they both kind of win and not keep pointing fingers at each other and get back, as I said, to the battlefield of ideas to tell their the people that are going to vote in the nominating process why they're the better candidate. I just see, unfortunately, I think it's like a circular firing squad at this point. And who blinks first or who backs down. And if we let the courts decide this matter, it's just not going to be good for any of them. Either way, let's say Wren wins. He's found not guilty. Well, still, it's the stain of the fight. If she wins and he's found guilty, well, it's bad on him. And still, she, people get bumped all the time, but you took it to the level of a court case. I mean, I just don't see a scenario where victory in a court of law for one of these parties, because one person wins, one person loses in a criminal court in these misdemeanors. Class 1 misdemeanor comes with 12 months potentially in jail and a $500 fine. Stays on your record forever. I just don't see anybody winning coming out of a court case. Because also, too, you can appeal it to the circuit court. This could go on for a year during the nomination and the general election process.
Now, has your phone rung yet as an attorney in this matter? Or was that
anyway.
you? We can't answer that.
Anyway, so like we were saying.
So look, Senator, let me just say this too, and it's not about me, but it's another. It's just another comparison in my situation when I have been openly accused of trespassing and theft of property. Okay, so who knows where that legal journey is going to go? But what you just said about the stain of the fight, that made headlines in the newspaper. That's the headline. Investigation called against Moss. Once you say that, you can't unsay it. So nobody wins. It almost gets to the point it doesn't matter to a certain extent who's right and who's wrong. In the public's eye, you are stained. And that's what these two candidates need to really put some thought in.
Hey, and you mentioned Don Scott earlier.
Yeah.
I was in West Virginia yesterday waiting for a dinner, and I saw this, on social media, and one of the first people to tweet about it and have comments about it was Don Scott and other members of the Democratic Party. They're like, look at these folks over here. What in the world is going on? Right. They're going to bring attention to something that probably amounts to very little, right, but people are looking at to try to get some political gain out of. And I just encourage not these two candidates, but Republican candidates across the Commonwealth of Virginia, keep in mind that it's important for Republicans as a whole to do strongly this November and also in 2023. And the only way that's going to happen is that if Republicans stand together, and I know they're going to be primaries or conventions, and there'll be battles and disagreements and all that, but we have to try to do that without tearing each other down. That leaves everybody damaged, and that makes a situation where this November and next November that we're fighting uphill battles. We need to pull together in that regard.
Yeah, and civility has always been a hallmark of being Republican. Shrill, antisocial behavior has always been the hallmark of a Democrat. I think the electorate is tired of negative politics. You have consultants that always say negative politics always wins. Oh, it works. You may hate it, but it works. Why not be the bigger person and change the dialogue and be civil? That's our nature in the Republican Party usually. But when we get into the weeds and start fighting like this, it never makes us look very good. I would just tell you, as a lawyer, I like both of these people. I don't think I would feel comfortable representing either one of them in this disagreement. But I am willing to offer both of them the advice that we just have. Find a way to come together. Find a way to return civility to this debate, and resolve this without having a court resolve it for you. Nobody's going to win there. That would be my political advice to them both, and let us move forward and capture the hearts and minds of Virginians as that we know what's best for our kids. We know the rights of parents. We know how to help small businesses. We know how to preserve your rights, and we treat everybody equally no matter what you are, who you are. We just don't give special rights out. We just think of everybody in the same way. So I wish them both the best of luck, and I guess this may be a topic that we continue to return to as the months go on, because I'm telling you, Hermie, arraignments in November, that means trials probably after session, which would be March, April, which is right in the heart of the primary or election nominating season. I don't think any of them wants to have this battle then. So I just don't see it working out right. And, if Mr. Delegate Williams is somehow convicted, then he has a right to appeal to the circuit court. So that could carry it on even further. And then instead of going door to door knocking and saying, my name is Delegate Ren Williams, my name is Delegate Marie March, and here are my ideas, and this is why I think I can represent you, they're instead lawyered up and having a fight of this primary in a courtroom. Just, it's not going to work. So that's what I implore both of them to do. And that's my leaning right moments for today.
Yeah, let's hope they get that straight. Hey, before we move to turning left, I mentioned earlier I was in West Virginia last night at a dinner with some representatives of Shell Motiva, and I had dinner with some people from the Holtzman family that are also in the petroleum business and have a relationship with one of your colleagues in the Senate of Virginia. So they were very curious and in tune to what we were doing with our lawsuit, and reminded me again how many people we're affecting in a positive way. So they passed along their well wishes to you and us in our fight on behalf of small business.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, Holtzman Oil employs so many people. They're up in the Northern Virginia, Northwestern Virginia area. Mr. Holtzman's a wonderful person. I've met him, had the honor and privilege of meeting him, and look, he takes care of his employees, and he distributes oil and gas just like you do, but to those small businesses that are depending on these skill games to be able to survive, especially if you look at what we're seeing right now, bear market. We're in bear market territory. A recession is in full swing. Things are looking bleak. Despite it going up only an inch, we have inflation over 8%. I mean, these are scary times.
I heard on the radio this morning that the average family household can expect next year the cost to heat their home will increase 17%, and those that heat their home with natural gas can expect a 32% increase in cost to heat their home.
Wow.
Alone. That alone.
And you know who that affects the most, right? It affects their bottom line the most, right? Lower income. People are living in lower income, lower middle income to lower income. Those are the bread and butter. Those are the every American. Those are the every man and woman, the backbone of our society even, and they're the ones paying the price. I saw a figure where a family of four was losing buying power because of inflation of over $4,000 a year from their income. And I also see polls that say Republicans know how to fix the economy. So we may see some real moves in November and maybe carried over into 2023 because we've got to fix this problem. We cannot let Americans suffer in the way that we have just because we want to feel good about a green energy policy. And after we tout the green energy policy, we get in our private jet and we fill the ozone with carbon monoxide as we jet back to our palatial estate, which uses 4 times the electricity of a normal house. And then we tell the peons like you and me how to live. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So let's turn left for a few moments before we get out of here. My turning left moments are sponsored by Laura Stanley and Vista Installations. Laura says she's been babysitting a politician and a trial attorney for more than 12 years. But she's also been running a successful window and door installation company for just as long. So we appreciate Laura and Vista Installations for sponsoring our Turning Left moment here on Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator.
And Vista Installations will be sponsoring the Hickory race of the Smart Tour. So, and they're going to have a bunch of installers that work for Vista Installations and also some representatives of Lowe's. So we're going to put on a good show for them as well in the Sadler Stanley race team. Are we running 2 cars there, Hermie, in Hickory? Or, yeah, that's right. You're running there.
No,
yeah.
We're running. Well, I don't. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
All right, at least 1, maybe 2 with Sadler in the car. And if Sadler's in the car, you want to be there. We know he's running in.
A lot of it has to do with what happens with Motor Mile, and we've got a commitment with Jonathan Cash, and we've got a commitment with Ryan Newman at Martinsville, and we just have to see how all the schedule plays out with Mother Nature. Turning left, let's talk about Texas Motor Speedway. What were your thoughts on the races over the weekend?
So I loved the Xfinity race. Noah Gragson wins 4 in a row. I think the Xfinity race is more exciting, and it's demonstrated even on Texas, which I think is a horrible track, and I know they're going to change it, and they ought to. I think Kyle Larson said just blow it up and start over again. But the Cup race, 16 cautions, almost a quarter of the race was run under caution. The right rear tires were blowing out, especially with the leaders. I don't know if that was because they're putting less air in them or something's wrong with the Goodyear tire, but it was always the right rear, it seemed, that would put everybody in the wall. Denny loses his second position because he gets bumped by William Byron, and they don't, and NASCAR doesn't see it. I mean, this thing was ridiculous, and then and took forever to run. So, I just I'm happy for Tyler Reddick winning, especially for RCR, in spite of what's been going on with him. But that was a bunch of ridiculousness out there. And why is the tire exploding in the right rear?
Well, I think ultimately, and Kyle Petty said this last week, that this new car, the next gen car, in so many ways has been really good for competition and for parity, for the mid-level teams to have a shot. It's closed the competition up closer together. But there's certainly some other issues. When the heat inside the cars is a problem. The cars just catching on fire is a problem. The way the cars absorb the energy at impact and certain impacts is a problem. And tires blowing out constantly is a problem. So there's the competition is better, the parity is better, but certainly there's work that needs to be done on races need to be decided on who's the fastest car that day, best driver that day, best setup, best pit strategy, not necessarily through a battle of attrition. And especially get down to the playoffs, that's kind of what you want to see. But I agree with you. Congratulations to Tyler Reddick. Also, congratulations to Noah Gregson to win 4 races in a row in any type of racing. These races are so hard to win.
Yeah.
Going back to all the things we just talked about, so for Noah Gregson to win 4 in a row at any level, much less at the Xfinity Series level, as competitive as that is just just really hard to do. So he and his team deserve to be commended for that. We also want to talk a little bit about Senator
and about Gregson too, though. That personality, he's like bringing some personality back to NASCAR. He's kind of like the Tim Richmond type. I know one day he was wearing his fire suit like Tim Richmond did, like open to the belly button for fun. But that kind of personality, I think, coming back when he moves into Cup is really going to be important. But my question also to you, outside of the Xfinity race, is you saw Cody Ware go into the wall and then come into the pit and hit really hard. But he like broke the wall with the impact that he had and lost a right rear tire, hit the wall. I mean, those impacts seem to be harder and more forceful inside the car. And I remember you and I having a conversation with Ryan Newman, the engineer from Purdue. And he went chapter and verse and told us exactly what his concerns were in the car. And he predicted that the car was not going to absorb as much of the hit, that it would be transferred to the driver. And I think that's what we're seeing. I mean, Kurt Busch is still out, can't race anymore. And he just backed it in, I think it was during qualifying or practice. My concern is this car could injure somebody or, God forbid, kill somebody.
Well, I go back to what I said at the beginning of the segment. The car has been really good for competition. It's been overall good for NASCAR and the parity of the sport, but there is work to be done. NASCAR is not always going to come out front and center and say, this is not right, that's not right. But I think all of us that are race fans that watch these races and more than that, care about the people that are racing in the cars, understand that more work needs to be done. And so we have to trust that they'll take it upon themselves to get some of that work done. And in the case, if they need to, admit where there's been mistakes in the engineering of this car and get it fixed. So typically they find a way to fix things, and we'll see if they're able to fix some of the issues with this car.
Now, what about, Denny's under yellow? William Byron, I guess, takes offense that he ran him up the wall a little bit in a previous lap, bumps him into the infield, spirals, does some figure eights in the infield. He was in second place. They put him, they didn't restore him to second place. He's wrecked under caution, and they act like they don't see it. To me, being a Denny Hamlin fan, I thought, again, either NASCAR was willfully blind and I know they got a lot going on, or didn't want to face the problem that was created by William Byron. I didn't understand that. How could they not put William at the end of the lead lap for a penalty? And I don't know whether they restore him. Wouldn't they restore Denny back to second place under caution or no?
This is a long question, Senator.
Yes, sir.
NASCAR announced after the race. NASCAR announced after the race, Scott Miller did, that they didn't realize or didn't know that Byron had spun Denny Hamlin under caution until they'd already gone back to green. So is that true or not? I assume that it is. Why didn't they see it? I don't know. But that's Scott Miller did say that they were not aware or did not see William Byron spin Denny Hamlin under caution prior to them going back to green flag.
It was right under their nose. It was on the front stretch. And what, they've got a Jumbotron, they've got cameras everywhere.
You don't have to sell me. I'm telling you what Scott Miller said. I don't know.
Okay, but do you think they take any action against William Byron or because Byron got more points? That affected the standings in the chase. Both are in the playoffs.
As we're taping this on a Tuesday, NASCAR typically announces any penalties Tuesday afternoon. So they very well, by the time this podcast hits, there could be some penalties for that altercation situation under caution.
Shep Moss, have you ever gotten hit in the rear that caused you to spin out in the grass?
No, I have not. I was just wondering.
You go to a lot of parties. You go to a lot of weddings. Have you ever gotten hit in the rear?
No, sir. We're not even in the golf cart. Has your phone rang yet from Denny Hamlin?
Yeah, not yet. But I would represent him there. I just thought that was, of all the things that could have gone wrong at the Texas race, and I think it was just a horrible race. That's just my opinion, and I watch it with my son, every single one. To add that to it was just, I mean, par for the course. But then here Denny says, well, I'm just going to add William Byron to the list of the people that I got to, return the favors for in the future. And I bet if he returns the favor to William Byron in the future, he'll be penalized. They won't miss that one. So that's my go Denny go.
So you're saying the black helicopters are flying around Texas Motor Speedway?
I saw them. I seen them. I seen them. Yeah, they're really
we mentioned earlier that as of right now on Tuesday, there's still a Smart Tour race scheduled for Motor Mile. We plan to have 2 cars in that race, Jonathan Brown and Jonathan Cash. You guys remember that Jonathan Cash was supposed to race at Orange County in a race that we were doing a somewhat of a fundraiser for the family of Chris Beasley, who we lost in the karting community a couple months back. We plan to do the same purse match for that race at Motor Mile. We hope that Mother Nature and Hurricane Ian cooperate so we can get that race in at Motor Mile this weekend. Senator, you and I will continue to keep people updated on our social media. That's mine and your social media personally, as well as SS Racing Facebook and Twitter account, because we're supposed to have a meet and greet, you and I and the Pace-O-Matic ride-along show car and some other things. We're supposed to be in the Motor Mile area on Friday doing some promotional stuff for the Smart Series and Pace-O-Matic, and some of our partners in this fight for small business that we've got going on against the Commonwealth of Virginia. But we'll keep everybody updated on social media as best we can when or if plans change due to weather.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We might be bringing an ARC to Dublin rather than a race car. But again, everybody be safe because, even though it's a tropical depression, it's a lot of rain, flooding. Everybody be very, very safe out there, no matter what happens throughout the weekend, all up and down the East Coast. Any of our listeners, please keep it, keep safe, keep inside, keep your pets inside. Be very careful and be a neighbor and help your neighbor if they're in need. So what a great open again. I always like talking to you about this stuff. And I have all these questions you won't let me ask during the weekend. And so I'm full of questions when I come out here. So I apologize if that's...
Well, the other problem you have when it comes to that is when you don't like somebody's answer, you ask the question again in a different wording, like you're in court, which I get. I understand. This is kind of
what a lawyer does.
Trial prep for you in certain ways.
Keeps me sharp.
But you can ask those kind of questions 12 different ways, and there's really only one answer, and the correct answer. So, not sure how I can help you with that. But hey, I hope people will stay tuned in. This interview or this next segment coming up is, in the words of Chad Monday, one of the best ones we've had ever on this podcast. It's an in-depth, personal recollection of between my family and the family of Brian and Mandi Calhoun. And this was taped last Friday prior to us participating in the F.E.A.T, Families Embracing Autism Together golf event in South Hill. So I think it's a great testimony, a great educational interview for people that not only have family members on the autism spectrum, but people that want to know more about about autism and how it can affect not just immediate families, but extended families and really entire communities. And so I hope everybody will tune into that.
Yep. May it inspire you all. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to us. We're going to take a break and then come back with this incredible interview you don't want to miss. I'm Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm leaning right.
And I'm Hermie Sadler, and I'm turning left. We'll be right back with Mandi Calhoun and my wife, Angie Sadler, with the Senator and I. We'll be right back. Hi, folks. This is Hermie Sadler. Thanks for listening to our all-new podcast, Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator. I hope you are enjoying the show as much as Senator Stanley and I enjoy bringing it to you. Whether you're a family traveling together or a truck driver hauling freight up and down the highway, I hope you will take the time to visit one of our Sadler Travel Plaza locations in Virginia and North Carolina. Sadler Travel Plaza locations are licensed dealer locations for Pilot Travel Centers, and we also carry Shell Motiva petroleum products for our four-wheel friends. We pride ourselves on providing one-stop shopping for service, food, and entertainment. Our food options include Five Guys Burgers and Fries, Quiznos, Dairy Queen, Hermie Sadler's Faux Show Bar and Grill, Victory Lane Restaurant, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Dunkin' Donuts, and much, much more. Our locations include Sadler Travel Plaza in South Hill, located off I-85 at Exit 12, the Sadler Travel Plaza of Emporia, which is conveniently located on Exit 11B off I-95, and Sadler Travel Plaza on Highway 58 in Suffolk. We also have our North Carolina location, Sadler Travel Plaza in Dunn, North Carolina. That's Exit 75 off I-95. We appreciate all of our customers. And Bill and I appreciate you listening to Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic.
Hey, this is Bill Stanley, Hermie Sadler's sidekick on this podcast. When I'm not in Richmond at the Capitol or doing this podcast, my real job for the past 27 years is as a trial attorney with the Stanley Law Group. Here at the Stanley Law Group, we represent our clients in every courthouse in the Commonwealth. No problem is too small for us to solve. No case is too big for us to win. Whether it's criminal charges, traffic offenses, civil disputes, litigation matters of any sort, we handle it all. We make sure that we treat every client like family because they are to us. Your problem is our problem. Your success is our success because we hate to lose more than we love to win. And believe me, we win a lot. Don't believe me? Go ask Hermie. I'm his favorite lawyer, and he hates lawyers. So give us a call at 540-721-6028 and let us help you. Or visit our website at www.vastanleylawgroup.com. That's www.vastanleylawgroup.com. At the Stanley Law Group, we'll make sure we're the lawyers that you swear by and not at. And we're back. I'm Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm leaning right.
And I'm Hermie Sadler. I'm turning left. This is Leaning Right and Turning Left with Sadler and the Senator, powered by Pace-O-Matic. And Senator, we're on location for this segment of the podcast. We're at the South Hill Country Club, South Hill, Virginia, for a special occasion, the annual golf fundraiser for the F.E.A.T organization, which stands for Families Embracing Autism Together.
And it's a very special, I think, interview that we're about to have, and especially someone that we've been trying to get on this podcast for a long time. This is hopefully the initial interview of one of these very special people, because we have another one to do, the Wives podcast. Someday when we all decide that it's a great idea, we'll get to that one. But this is a very important issue for so many families in the Commonwealth of Virginia and throughout the nation. And so I think what we're about to do here is really kind of take a little bit of a deep dive into autism, why it's so important that families band together and describe, even what this organization is and does, and how we as Virginians can not only be more aware, but also how we can make a difference, how we can maybe in the legislature make a difference. So I'm very, very excited to be sitting here with some really wonderful people. So why don't you introduce them?
So our you've kind of halfway pre-introduced one of our guests, and that's my wife, Angie. So
my client, Angie. Your
client, Angie, which we'll tell that story later as to how you went from being my counsel to hers right in the middle of an estate planning meeting.
A chair had wheels on it.
Yes.
That was as simple as it was.
And our other special guest is Mandi Calhoun, who her and her husband, Brian, and their family are actually putting these events on that are doing so many great things for our community. So, Mandi, we want to talk about our kids and in autism and the diagnosis and all that. But let's start with this event today. What annual event is this? Tell our people what we're doing here and what the F.E.A.T organization, which you guys support here locally and around this Southside Virginia.
Sure. I think this is actually our 5th annual golf tournament. We had to skip a year due to COVID, but this is our largest fundraiser for our organization, Families Embracing Autism Together. And our organization services Southside Virginia and just tries to bring more awareness to our community. We help families with different aspects, whether it's support, whether it's funding. We like to educate our educators and other professionals in the community. We do a variety of events with our children locally. We have things such as a sensory night at the pumpkin patch or sensory Santa. We've got big plans for a little buddy ball program come spring. So we've got a lot of things going on, and we've just been blessed by the support of our community. And this, for me, the organization's very personal, as my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4. And this program started out of a need for the community for awareness and support. There was just no services here. We were actually diagnosed at Duke, and we had someone come in when we were diagnosed, or my son was diagnosed, and say that we were going to have to relocate to a different area because our community couldn't service the needs of my son. And with my husband being a business owner here, our families were here, it just wasn't an option for us. So we had to get creative a way to bring more awareness to our community and more support here.
Now, we'll be talking a lot about Bailey, who is your son, who is on the autism spectrum, as our daughter Haley Drew is. But introduce to our listeners and our people that follow this podcast, tell us about all 3 of your kids.
Okay, so Bailey's our oldest. He is 12, and he's a student at Kinston Forest School, and he's a great young man. People sometimes think that children on the autism spectrum are, not loving and not affectionate, and if Bailey knows you, that couldn't be farther from the truth. I call him my snuggle buddy, which I seem very fortunate to have at 12 years old, that I still have my son that wants to snuggle with me. He's a great kid. Like I said, Bailey loves to be around others, loves to be around people. He may not always interact or may not always, understand what's going on, but he has a great love for people and just enjoys having friends and enjoys being a part of things. So that's Bailey. And then we have our 8 going on 9-year-old, Caroline, our daughter. And then we have our youngest daughter, Stella, who's 2, who runs our house.
How has the, for us, of course, Haley's much older. She's 24. She was diagnosed at about 2.5. But one thing we quickly learned, it takes a whole family unit, not just your immediate family, but your entire family and friend unit to make it work when you got a special kid like this. How has the dynamic, or how has Bailey's situation, you think, changed the dynamic of your family that involves your kids? Even though they're young, I assume they kind of are getting to where they understand there's some special needs there.
Oh, absolutely. And I think of a story of Caroline. Caroline wasn't even quite 2 years old yet, but she was very smart for her age, very verbal. And, with autism sometimes comes, aggression and things like that. And Bailey, at unfortunately that age, he was much younger then, and aggression was an issue. And at 2 years old, Caroline had the understanding of what was going on. And I remember he would pull her hair if he got upset. And she just understood. And I remember him being upset one time, and he tried to pull her hair, and, I separated them. And I remember Caroline taking her ponytail down and saying, "Mom, he can pull my hair if he needs to." And it's just their children, my children treat Bailey like anything else. Stella climbs all over them. They love them. It's definitely, like you said, it takes a village. We've got wonderful, family support. We couldn't ask for, be a better situation with our family. We've had 3 amazing aides that have been with Bailey since day 1 at school. And, if it weren't for those people, he wouldn't be able to participate in those schools. So like I said, we're just very blessed to have, and the community too, just the community that offers support to us personally and to this organization.
I want to get your perspective. I want to get Angie's first on when Haley was diagnosed, and then come back to when you got a diagnosis for Bailey. Because for me, when we got Haley's diagnosis, I went through personally 4 or 5 different major emotions, from like shock and then anger And then we kind of went into what do we need to do, we went through, and I think the statistics were when Haley was diagnosed, 1 in every 500. That's how long that's been. Now it's like 1 in 50, something like that, or maybe even less. But Angie, what do you remember about the period of time when Haley got diagnosed? What led up to us feeling like we needed to get her help, and what do you remember about that process?
I think what really was the biggest event for us was Christmas Day, when Santa Claus had come and there was toys everywhere in the den, and Cora comes flying in there to see what Santa Claus has brought her, and Haley walks in behind her and has got like a notebook. She used to flip notebooks that had nothing in them, and she walked right past the entire room full of toys and kept going and went upstairs and sat down in a corner and just kept flipping the book. And so I think we realized then that it was definitely something was not right with her. I had lots of people telling me, along with my parents, that they thought that she was on the spectrum. And we ended up getting her an appointment to go see a doctor. I guess it was like the first part of February after Christmas, so we could really get that final diagnosis. But the day we got the diagnosis, Hermie was not with me. He was traveling. I'm guessing because it was in early February. I think he was in Daytona. And my mom went with me. And when the lady gave me the diagnosis, and I called Hermie, and I was all to pieces telling him about it. And he said to me, "Is she gonna die?" And I said, "No, she's not gonna die." And he said, "Well, Angie, we can get through this." He said, "I know I'm not there, but we'll get through this when I get home." And I'll never forget that day, because I thought the world was coming to an end. And he was miles and miles away from me. And I was having to go through this alone with my mom. And he had the positive attitude about it. And so I went home and I went through my grieving process for about 24 hours. And when he got home, I realized if he can be strong and he can have this mentality about it, I can be strong too. And we immediately started figuring out what we needed to do. And the first thing with Hermie was he was like, we need to make this autism aware to everybody. He said, we need people to know what we're going through. And so he decided to, and Cora was like 4.5 at the time, and he decided to race at Bristol and have a race car that was going to have autism awareness on it. And he decided to get on national TV and let everybody know then what we were starting to go through. And at that event, Cora, talking about kids picking up on things, Cora at the time was 4. So there's an 18-month difference between her and Haley. And Cora started figuring out something was going on. And so she was asking us a lot of questions. Cora, very mature for her age. She is still very mature, even at almost 26 years old. But after that event, Cora came up to us and was like, "Is something wrong with Haley?" And we at first didn't know exactly how we were going to answer that, because she's 4 years old. And so we decided, let's just be honest with Cora and let her know what's going on. And from that moment on, she was like, "Can I go with her to therapy? What can I do? Can I help her, do these things at home? What can I do to help you?" And so from that day that we decided to be honest with Cora, Cora grew up. And I say from that day, she has been Haley's #1 fan on top of Hermie and I, and her biggest supporter, because she's been there since day one. But It's been a long road, but I'd say the last 5 to 10 years for us has been pretty good. The first part was pretty rough, but we got through it, and we got through it with a lot of family and friends.
You know, the thing for us, we had Cora's milestones, and then Haley really started to reach some of those milestones prior to her regressing. I mean, I can remember a time when she could say mommy and daddy, and then she regressed and lost all of that. But in y'all's case, Bailey was your first child. You didn't really have any milestones to really go by. So what did y'all see with Bailey, or what made you think that maybe you needed to try to get him some help?
So, with Bailey, his speech was slow. He did have a good single word vocabulary on a normal time, but he was very slow to put 2 words together. So I think they typically say, two words together, and then progress from there. He didn't actually start putting 2 words together till he was probably about 4. So, we started in speech services first, thinking, go that direction. And there's other things looking back now that, everybody's like, boys are just slow, or, he was obsessed with trucks like all little boys are, and equipment, following and seeing what his dad was doing. But he would lay on the floor and just watch the wheels turn back and forth. And he would lay there for an hour just watching those. And I just thought, he loves trucks. We had a lot of sensory issues. I remember changing seasons and going from short sleeves to long sleeves and back. It was a fight for weeks when we first changed those clothings out, trying to get, him to wear those things. Crowds, loud noises. We stayed home. We stayed home a lot because we just couldn't take him anywhere. We would try, and it just wasn't successful, and it ended up him being upset. We would be upset. So, for a long time, we stayed home until things got better. Of course, we were able to go around family and things, but as far as taking him out and doing things. So that was so we started with speech services, and then a couple months into speech services, I think we all knew, there's definitely more to this. And it took us a long time to get a diagnosis. That's one problem I think and I'm still hearing now, Bailey's been diagnosed for 9 years, and I'm still hearing the issues of wait times to get into see developmental specialists. So it took us about 11 months from start to finish to get a diagnosis.
Which that time is crucial.
It's crucial because he was 3 years old at that time, which they say is absolutely key for getting those things and making those changes. So we were running the clock, but we weren't getting anywhere to get those services that we needed. And at that time, too, those services weren't available in Southside Virginia. We drove to Richmond and we drove to Duke for speech, occupational therapy, behavior therapy, ABA therapy. I mean, I drove him 5 days a week to Richmond. So.
What's ABA therapy?
Applied behavior analysis. Okay. It's a common therapy.
Talk about those therapies and how they apply in terms of trying to, after you've gotten the diagnosis of autism, what are we trying to do? What sensory perceptions are we trying to invigorate here with these children at this position? Why do you go through all those therapies for him?
Obviously speech with Bailey was probably one of the biggest. So just trying to get that vocabulary out. And, with autism, a lot of kids never develop that verbal communication, but it's still key for them to have some type of communication. I know a lot of children use tablets to communicate. So, and I think that's a lesson that a lot of people have to learn, that those words may never come, but they can still communicate, they still understand. And then for Bailey, again, the sensory part was a big part of it. He liked deep compression, he liked things, so we went through periods of trying weighted blankets and vests and things like that because that sensory is what regulated his emotions and his willingness to be cooperative. If he was feeling something inside and couldn't verbalize that to us, then we weren't going to get anything else progressing. So we had to get those things. And then with the ABA therapy, that was a lot of just teaching him different skills and teaching him how to sit at a table, how to participate in some type of, educational setting. So that really was key for us in beginning his educational path to have that.
What is, when you were talking about, especially early on, not being able to go a lot of places with Bailey or new places or big open spaces. I remember taking Haley, early on after her diagnosis, we go to the racetrack on the motorhome, and when Haley would see us pull into the parking lot at the racetrack, she would put her pajamas on. And that was her way of saying, y'all do whatever you want, but I'm in my pajamas and I'm not leaving. She liked it, she liked that security of being inside the motorhome. So it just kind of brought back some, sad at the time, but kind of cute now, Haley, just her way of talking to us back in those days. She couldn't always verbalize things, but her putting that on, pajamas on when we get somewhere. And that
we would try to get her on pit road, and we get right to the fence where you walk through the walkway, and she'd grab hold of that chain fence and put a death grip on it that nobody could pry off, and she'd hang on to that fence, and she won't go on any farther. And so somebody would have to take the call of who's going to stay with Haley and who's going to continue on to pit road. Most of the time, it ended up being either Herman Jr. or Bale would stay with her and let me go out there on pit road with Cora and Hermie instead of me staying with her. So she always got her way.
What is one of the things all these years later, Haley has been a blessing to us in so many different ways, and it took me a long time to really realize it. But the one thing that concerns me most about her now is her diet. Mm-hmm. She's very, very limited diet. Now, we go to the doctor regularly and get blood work done, and her numbers look fine, but it's chicken nuggets, crispy, different kinds of chips, Doritos, things. But she does drink water. Her only beverage of choice is water. And her labs and things so far look good. But I do worry about her as she gets older, nutrition, and eventually we have to try to figure out a way to expand her diet in some ways. And look, let's just say this, because we know this at the table talking, but many people listening don't. Every child on the spectrum that I've ever met is different in some way, shape, or form. So what is Bailey's diet like?
Same thing every day. It's funny because, as a little one, he would eat anything. I remember he'd eat a can of beets, but probably about 4 years old, that changed for us. He has pizza every single day in his lunchbox. He has chicken and French fries every single night for dinner. Mm-hmm. For years, it had to be...
And he won't try anything else?
No. Yeah. For years, it had to be a specific brand of pizza, Totino's Pizza, every day.
He's got good taste.
Yeah. And that's been an issue for us. And I can tell you, in the past couple months, we've actually are starting to face some health issues with Bailey. Mm-hmm. His sugar and glucose numbers are climbing. They've become borderline diabetic. Mm-hmm. His triglycerides are 3 times what they should be. He's vitamin D deficient. So we're at the point now, visiting an endocrinologist where things have to change for him health-wise, or we're going to have to start making some medical interventions for him. And it's scary to think, Bailey's always been healthy. Like we say, we laugh, he probably has the best immune system in our family. If he gets sick, he's down for a day and he's right back up, But these are things that, he's 12 years old and we're facing them now, and this is going to, impact him for the rest of his life. We are going through some therapy now where we have started seeing a nutritionist, and I have to give her credit because she knows that the reality of us giving us a diet, Bailey's not going to follow that. It's going to be slow changes. So we're trying to take the foods that he is, open to eating and changing them up to make them a little bit healthier. So we've got him where I can actually make his pizzas now. Mm-hmm. I'm giving him chicken nuggets that are still out of a frozen package, but they're gluten-free and have hidden vegetables in them. So we're trying to take things, and they call it food chaining. We're trying to food chain him into better choices. So like I said, we're seeing a nutritionist now, and we're doing an eating program at Duke as well right now that we just started at the beginning of September. So this is a big part of our life right now, and a big part of, food prep and trying, and some things he's open to, and some things it's a initial gag. And Bailey's will try things, but he's not going to incorporate them into his diet. So,
well, and you've got with the challenges and the characteristics of autism, repetitious behaviors also bring comfort to the brain. What I was reading last night after you and I got back from the baseball game in depth, and quite frankly, that's why I think this is so important, because someone even like me, I'm a state senator. I'm not fully aware of not just what you guys are going through and go through on a daily basis, but how much we can help. But to see that a lot of what they do is comforting, because inside their brain is working very fast, and that they have incredible capabilities that even us, as, if you want to call us regular, don't have. And they're just kind of, they're kind of guarded around with these repetitious behaviors. Is food itself then a comfort and repetitious behavior? That is to say, I know when I eat and again, your daughter has excellent taste in the salt and vinegar potato chips. That is one of the delicacies
Boy, I would
in life.
love to know how many bags of salt and vinegar potato chips we've bought.
I don't understand why we didn't get a sponsorship with Lay's. It would have been great.
I think it's a phone call away right now at this point in time. But, she was speaking about those opportunities where you're incorporating some things that maybe he doesn't know about. With Haley, is she willing to try new things, or it's just, can you even get her to try, say, hey, why don't you try some of this? And she's absolutely no?
We have tried several ways. Even her sisters have tried. The last time we took her into a restaurant and thought that we would get her to try some of the chicken there because we thought the chicken was pretty good. And she made a scene in the restaurant, spit the food out, and we were like, okay, that's it. We're done. Eat whatever you want. Not going to try anything else.
Now, I know she goes to Faux Show.
Yeah.
I've been on a lot of conversations where...
Crunchy French fries.
Bojangles, Burger
crispy
King,
crunchy French fries.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
So this is still the same foods. It may be different environments.
The other thing is for Haley is I think she's a little obsessed with drive-thrus. So she's not really interested in Hermie going and getting her food and bringing it to her. She wants to go through and experience the drive-thru. So she likes to watch that on her phone or on her iPad. She'll watch people pulling up to drive-thrus and ordering their food and telling people thank you. And then if they don't, respond to her, she gets a little mad at them. So we went through the drive-thru 2 days ago, and when we got up to the front and I finished placing the order, and Haley was like, thank you. And the lady was like, you're welcome. And she was like, yes. So she wants them to talk back to her, even though she doesn't want to place the order. But I think a little bit of that's the repetition. And she wants to say this. She wants you to say the same thing, even though you know that the cooks in the kitchen at McDonald's are not going to leave her French fries in any longer than they're going to leave everybody else's French fries in. Mm-hmm. But she's going to make sure that you tell them she wants it crispy, crunchy, extra seasoning, and then she wants, a bottle of water. And even though we got 100 bottles of water in our refrigerator at home, she still needs to get the bottle of water from the drive-thru.
The one thing we'll talk about in a few moments is that people lose sight of sometimes is these kids grow up to be adults. And we talk about the health side, and I'm going to talk about the group home situation and all that, in a minute. But when we started dealing with Haley's diet, and another great friend of mine is Artie Kempner, who's the director for NASCAR on Fox. He's got an autistic child, and he's head of the Autism Society of Delaware, and they do a lot of work up that way. But I remember talking to Artie one time, this has been 7 or 8 years ago now, about Haley and her diet. I said, how do we do this? How do we do that? And for lack of a better way of saying it, he said, Hermie, you're almost going to have to starve her. You're going to have to make her do without the stuff that she needs until she gets so hungry she's willing to try something else. And I'm like, dude, I can't do that, And so we've never been able to find a way that we were comfortable, getting her to transition. But she is so tight with the things that she eats and very limited. But I do, I'm worried about her now at her age. She's bigger, and I try to, do as much as we can. At least now she's working every day. She works at Faux Show in the mornings and then goes to the oil company after that, and she does chores, and at least she's walking, the whole time, which gives me some comfort with that. But let's back up a minute. I remember one of the first challenges we had that I remember Angie getting sideways about was when we went to the public school system in Greensville County working on an IEP for Haley. And that was our first dose of, these people at the school systems have no idea what's going on or how to deal with it. or whatever. What do you remember?
Yeah, and I'm exceptionally interested in this because what I think part of this discussion should be today is also what are the experiences of parents in the state system when you're seeking services? Because, I was just reading here, 1 out of 44 is diagnosed with autism in the United States.
Yeah.
That is a huge responsibility on the public school system, a huge responsibility that we should be taking on in the state government, and we're not. So I want you guys to walk through what you've had to do, the frustrations, the failures, and maybe we can find out how we in the Commonwealth of Virginia can make this even better for you as parents and for the children.
I learned real quick that I feel that there are parents out there right now who have children with special needs and are not getting the services that their child deserves. And the reason that I say that is that you really have to know your stuff when you go into those IEP meetings to get the services for your kid that they deserve.
What do you mean by that?
Well, for me, the first time that I went into an IEP meeting, I was not aware of how the whole thing was going to go. So it's a very overwhelming meeting to start off with.
And for those that don't know, IEP stands for what?
Individualized education plan.
Yeah.
Right.
And in this plan, it's basically the plan for your child for the entire year. So if your child is going to get speech therapy or occupational therapy, if they're going to have the one-on-one aid, all of this information is in this particular plan. And so the first time that we went into this meeting, and like I said, most of the time I was going to these meetings because Hermie was on the road. And so I would go in there and I would be overwhelmed because it's you, and I would always take someone with me. And my mom would go with me because she was an educator for 32 years, so she was aware of how the whole plan process worked. So she was there for support and there to, answer any questions that I had, initially. But, when they come in and it's the principal of the school, the director of special ed, a teacher from special ed, another teacher. So you're in a room full of other educators, and all of them are there to tell you basically how they think your child should be educated. And so the first thing that I learned was that my child was not allowed to have the best education that they were allowed to get.
Appropriate?
Yeah. Yes, that your child was only entitled to an appropriate education, not the best education. So when you came into that meeting...
So they're lessening the standards, not just for what your child is taught,
the language,
but the expectations of the teachers of what
they were really harped in on, we only have to provide an appropriate plan.
We only have to have the lights on in a room is what that says to me.
Yeah.
So you as a parent, if you come in there and you have the vision of what you really think is going to be the best outlook for your child for that school year, if it's not the appropriate outlook, then you're typically not going to get it.
Appropriate is like in the eyes of the beholder.
Sure
and so how do they define appropriate to you? This is what Haley is going to get or what your child was going to get, Haley or Bailey.
Yeah, so this has been 20 plus years ago for me. And it's a time of my life that I'm glad is over. And I feel for parents today that have to endure this because it's very, it's time consuming, it's challenging, and it weighs a lot on you because then you're wondering if you were able to get the services that your kid actually needed for that particular year or not. But for Haley to start off with, we had her in the special ed classroom. This was my first IEP. She was in this classroom, and then she was getting speech like once a week, and she was getting occupational therapy once a week. Then I learned that sometimes the speech therapist was sick and didn't come, or she didn't get her occupational therapy. And technically, you're supposed to make that up, but they weren't making it up. Why were they not making it up? Because they didn't have anybody that could fill those positions. So
you're saying a shortage of teachers who have these kind of skills.
Well, the therapists, because they would have these therapists that would come from outside that would actually come into the school system and work with these kids. So we started taking Haley outside of the school ourselves personally, and took her to Petersburg and started letting her do speech therapy and occupational therapy there. So we were ensured that she was getting what we wanted her to have, but we were still allowing the school to provide it, but we wanted to see ourselves that she was getting the services she deserved. And in this therapy was when...
But that was at your own expense too, right?
At our own expense.
If a family is at or below the poverty level, they're stuck with whatever the public
Exactly.
school gives them.
And that's a big problem.
That's what the biggest problem is. And so after we did that process, and Hermie had, started going on TV and started making people aware of autism and talking about autism and things like that, we had someone to reach out to us from the Facing School in Richmond. And they were like, we think your daughter would be a great candidate for our program. And, this program was fairly early on, that had been, started by a family whose the grandchild was autistic, and she was a couple of years older than Haley. And so they had, started this wonderful facility that has really evolved now into something that's just amazing. I went there like 2 years ago. But these people came to us and were like, we really want you to bring your child here. And so that's when the fight started. And it started for me to show Greensville County that the services that Haley was getting in Emporia was not the services that she needed to help her with autism. And that we needed to send her to this facility in Richmond to get her this therapy that she needed that was intensive to help her. So our goal was to bring her back and to put her in the regular ed classroom. So we started the process, and at that time is when we started learning about best versus appropriate. Facing School was like considered the best, and Greensville was the appropriate. But we
One of the frustrating things I remember experiencing along those times was they had all these kids with these different issues, special needs issues, might be autism, might be other things. They had them all in one room together, and they were all picking up behaviors and things
Right.
from the other. And we tried to tell them, not even knowing what we were really dealing with, is like, these kids need to be around normal kids as much as possible so they pick up on good behaviors and they just, I guess just like everything else, it came back to money and financing. But back in those days at Greensville, they had all these different kids with these different issues all in a room together, like with hate to say it this way, but like a babysitter, and then they tried to do it. But Bill, you brought up a good point. We had the resources to give Haley some other opportunities that a lot of families just don't have. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today at this golf tournament, is because you want to be able to have every child have a chance. And some parents just didn't have that. But you can go ahead and talk more about the Facing School. But I just remember one of the things that frustrated me was the fact that Haley was in an environment for most of the day with kids that their behaviors were not going to help her progress.
And you're saying, so then the public school here in the Commonwealth of Virginia was doing a one-size-fits-all kind of attitude, even though
that
these
was our
children may be
experience. I want to hear
different?
Mandi's experience with Bailey after Angie, but our experience was, yes, this is what we feel like is an appropriate program for your kid, and this is what we can provide. And it was just not going to give our child a chance, and not going to give anybody else's child a chance.
And for a legislator, what my concern is there's not only what we give our schools, the public school divisions from the Commonwealth of Virginia, there is an extra fund based on the number of children that have IEPs or that are autistic. There's a large amount of money that goes to that school division, that county, based on that number, that is supposed to bring more professional services, more than appropriate, Angie, educational opportunities. And I know schools squawk about that number. They're always really big on making sure they get that extra bit of money. But what my concern has always been is we, the Commonwealth, through taxpayer funds, give that school that may have 50 students, I'm just throwing out a number, based on mathematical formula, they get X amount of dollars. And it's not insignificant. It's six figures or more. from that money is supposed to go right into the classroom, but I see that it doesn't. It's kind of like a gutter full with leaves, and when the rain comes down, because it stops at the top, only a trickle makes it down to the
Things could be different in 2022, but back when we were dealing with Haley, it was obvious very early on that they were doing enough to get by with the money they had. And plus, I got to be honest with you, which, you've learned me well enough to be able to know certain things that I don't like the way people come across. But I felt like when we went to those meetings in Greensville, of course, we talked about this and that, but I kind of felt like they were looking at Angie and I saying, y'all got enough money to do whatever y'all need, go somewhere else. Why y'all badgering?
You're bothering them. You're a burden to the school system. And you shouldn't be, because you had enough resources to do something about it. But again, but for those resources, there are so many parents just like you in that similar situation. And what, does then the school have the other attitude that they're going to they'll resign themselves that, yes, we have to take your kid and we'll do our best, but don't complain, because the standard, the bar is appropriate, not best.
Well, and I think for us, I had to learn quickly that I needed to build my own team of people to be with me when I went to these meetings. And so I started bringing in my speech therapist. I brought in my own psychologist. I brought in another person that was like part of the Face in School, people that knew Haley. So they were always there for me, that if they saw things that they didn't like, that we could jump on it pretty quick before the meeting ended. I did learn too that you don't have to sign that IEP the day you go in for that meeting. So I used that well to my advantage every time I went. And then I would always say, well, I'm going to take this home and review it with my husband, and we'll get back with you in a couple of days.
They didn't like that?
They did not like that, because most parents are in there and just want to get it over with, and they just sign it and they're done with it. The other thing that's kind of scary about something like that, and I learned this as well, is that things can be put inside this IEP that you might not know about, because there's only a few pages that you sign as a parent in this IEP. And so then I learned, okay, I'm going to sign and initial every page, and then I'm going to make a copy of every page. And I still have copies of all of my IEPs in a nice little box at home. But I had everything initialed and signed, so I would make sure that no changes were made or no things were added. But the biggest thing that ended up happening was we were in a meeting, and Greensville ended up paying for Haley to go to the Face in School for 2 years. So they ended up paying her to go the 2 years that she went. But the biggest thing that happened to us was in one of the meetings, there was some language that was thrown into the IEP that I was not aware of, that one of my consultants with me picked up on it and immediately was like, we need to take a break. We need to talk. And so we asked if we could take a break out there, and she was like, we need to get out of here. This is not good. They are trying to say that they're going to pay for Haley to go one more year to the Face in School, but when she comes back to Greensville, she's going into the stay put environment. And the stay put environment was, she was going in the special ed room, and she was going to be there her entire time she was at Greensville. And I was like, I don't understand. The whole point of her going to the Face in School is to get her to come back and be in the regular ed classroom with the typically developing kids. Why do they want her to be there? That's what we're trying to overcome. And that's when the fight began. And we realized then that it was going to be a long road. We had to bring someone else in as a consultant, and they pretty much trained me on how they wanted me to handle things and gave me the materials of how they wanted me to learn and what I needed to do moving forward. And we ended up getting what we needed for Haley. But I felt like every year when the IEP time came around, I was always
Which all of that
geared
goes
up.
back to the same point.
But there's not a lot of fight, and a lot of parents. You said
That's
it,
what I'm saying.
too. I'm looking at two that will go to the ends of the earth for the
But
children.
what I'm saying is,
there's not a lot of fight, especially when the bureaucracy will beat you down, and they'll outweight you, they'll outlast you.
Yeah, that was the thing that was important to us then. Is not only we fighting for Haley, but we felt like we were fighting for other kids, to trying to reform things or bring attention to, give them the benefit of the doubt. But they were things that came along with us that we felt like they were trying to dead end Haley, in a lot of ways.
And I can say that at our time that we went through this, which, 18 to 20 years ago, when we were with the Facing School for Autism and the staff that Facing had, part of the agreement with Haley going there was for their staff to come back with Haley when we brought her back to school at Greensville, and to train the staff at Greensville to come and see Haley once a month. These are things that they never embraced. Haley was at Greensville.
They being the school system.
The school system. They did not embrace the services that were being brought to them from them sending Haley to the Facing School. So when...
Why? Wait a minute. Why? I mean, did they think it was an invasion or somebody telling them what to do?
I don't know. I mean, I can't answer that question. I know that the team of people that we had with that program at Facing were willing to do anything and everything to help the other children that were there at the school, and to help the special ed department on things that they could do, because they felt like that they needed to have some form of an autism classroom. Now, it did evolve years later where they did start trying to, on their own, they started trying to have some other programs in place, with kids just with autism and things like that. But with Haley, and just like she was saying with Bailey, he has to have a one-on-one. Haley had to have a one-on-one. So when she came back to Greensville, after we went through, everything, trying to get stuff straight to bring her back to Greensville and put her in the regular ed classroom, we ended up having one of the girls from the Facing School agreed to come to Emporia and live to go with Haley to school, because we wanted someone who was trained in autism to work with her. Now, this is a girl who's college educated, this is her livelihood, and she knows how to work with kids with autism. That was another fight that we had with the school system. They wanted to give me an employee who was someone who made $11,000 a year, came into school and was going to babysit my child all day. Right. That was not what we were interested in. So that's when Hermie and I had to supplement income for this person from the Facing School. So they would come to Emporia. We paid them to be in Emporia and let them get their little bonus from the school system for them going with her to school. And so then that's where I look at, you've got kids that have a disability that people are not trained, and then you're trying to include them in the classroom, and you have people that don't even know how to include them in the environment, much less get the child to do the work that's necessary so they will get an education. So that was a whole nother fight that we had with them. And we did that for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade. And after third grade, Hermie and I just finally said, we're done. We're done playing the games. We're done with, all the politics that go on in the schools and what they don't want to do and what they're trying to do. And we were trying to tell them that we needed to place Haley with kids that were going to help her because she has a social disorder. We wanted her to learn how to socialize at school, and they kept putting her in classrooms and in positions where she was not able to make friends. The situation got worse. And so that's when we decided to pull the plug and say, you know what? I'm tired of an IEP. I don't need an IEP anymore. If we're going to spend the money we're spending to have people go to school with her, we might as well educate her the way we want to educate her and not the way that they want us to educate her. And so that's why we finally decided to move her to Brunswick Academy where her sisters were, so she could at least be in an environment where she was with her sisters and that they could look after her. And we could pay someone to, go with her to school and come up with our own education plan and not deal with going to these meetings and them not giving you the therapies. She needed speech therapy 3 days a week. I didn't have time to every day say, did she get speech therapy? Did she not get speech therapy? Okay, now I've got to go back and say, okay, well, y'all have missed 6 therapies this week. We need to make them up. And then they're like, well, I'm not sure when I'm going to make them up. That fight got old real quick.
Wow.
And so now, here you are, 2022. I'm not in the schools anymore, and so I don't know what's going on other than people that'll come and tell me, their stories of what they're having to go through and trying to get the services for their kids. But I know that there's probably a lot of parents that their child needs services and they're not getting them. Mm. And the reason is because they would have to spend money. They would have to hire extra teachers, probably have different environments for these kids. They're not going to do that. I mean, now you're talking about you can't even get teachers in the schools. So what do you think is happening to all these kids who have special needs, and there's no teachers there that are willing to even teach the regular ed kids, much less the kids who have special needs and need someone who can give them that extra attention that they deserve and protect them. Because these kids with special needs, I mean, that's why we have a one-on-one that goes with them. We need to know as a parent that our child is protected when they're not with us. If they're not with us, we don't know what's happening to them. So, I mean, that is what is scary about what could be going on in the present time. And like I said, I don't know with you, Mandi, did you have
you
to?
have a younger
did you start
child
with
now?
The school system?
We actually
With Bailey,
did.
how's this going?
Yeah.
Is this the same, or have we made progress?
Well, I do think we have made some progress in our local schools, but I will say, I still hear the same stories that you hear, Angie. I still hear the fights when they need those extra services. We need those one-on-one aides, fighting for the one-on-ones when they need extra support that the school system can't offer, and and that becomes the school system's responsibility to pay for them to attend another place. With us, our journey was a little bit different. We were in, a private Christian preschool, and when we got ready to explore kindergarten options for Bailey, we had a lot of people come to us and say, don't go the public school route, because of the exact stories that Angie just said,
20 years later.
Yeah. Yep.
Same thing.
Yeah. So we explored different options. We looked at Faison. We looked at a school in Danville, Virginia. And then, we knew of Hermie and Angie, and we knew of their story and them having, being in a private setting and having an aide for Haley. So we explored all the options, and that seemed to be the best fit for us. So that's the route we went. But and it's been great because Bailey is not, his intellectual ability is not able to ever be able to graduate with a typical diploma, anything like that. He's several grades behind cognitively, but we wanted to set up his day, and this is, the benefit of that, and this is how it should be in the public school system. His day is set to where it's going to most benefit him and give him what he needs to be more independent as he gets older. We so much is incorporated life skills. Our schools here don't have those life skills programs. You hear of schools in other areas that have these amazing life skill programs. They take them into the community, they let them have the job experience. And that's one thing, our organization, F.E.A.T, we have a sub-program, Links Learning and Networks of Community Support, where we've started, and we're taking children in the public school system and hiring aides for them and allowing them to work. But like I said, my journey was a little bit different with Bailey, but it's because of people like Angie and Hermie, and their stories is what led us to go the direction that we did. And even people within the the school system. I had friends that were teachers and said, Mandi, you know, in college or since I've been a part of the school system, no one's ever educated me on autism. I wouldn't even know how to handle Bailey in my classroom. And it's not their fault. They've just never been presented that knowledge. So again, with F.E.A.T, one thing we try to do is have training for school systems and bring people in to educate the educators so that kids have, you know, more support.
Well, I think the big thing for us, it has been for quite some time, Haley ended up going back into Brunswick Academy. We were able to not only pay for her to go to Brunswick Academy, but pay for an aide out of our pocket to go. And we think we have given Haley probably the best possible outcome to this point. You know, she went to BA. She was with her sisters. She, just like Bailey, you know, not a regular diploma, but she was able to walk and graduate with her peers, and she was named homecoming queen and all these wonderful things. But there are so many. We're lucky because we didn't have to rely on the school system or what they thought was appropriate or what they were willing to spend money on. And the sad thing for me is, you know, 9 families out of 10 can't do that. And so that's kind of what we've tried to, you know, the last 15 years or so is try to do anything we can to, through our foundation, and same thing what y'all are doing, is try to assist, subsidize, or whatever the right word is, other families that are facing this dead end like we were facing back in those days. So it makes you feel good when you can touch a life like that. And, you know, I think any family that, you know, like Bill and I talk about all the time, you know, Bill talks about his relationship with his father. Bill's father, you know, passed away when Bill was, you know, graduating college. And so he says all the time, you know, I want to do something to change the world. And he says, if you can change one person's life, you can, in effect,
Change
you
the
know,
world, and you've changed the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the next
My dad
part,
told me.
the next part, as we, you know, try to start wrapping this up, we got a golf tournament to play. You know, one thing that people don't talk about enough, in my view, is, you know, when Bailey was young, he's still young, but when they're small, and you know, Haley was small, but Haley's 24 now. Won't be long, you know, Bailey. So what's next for these kids? And we're again fortunate that we, you know, Haley, will, as far as I'm concerned, will always live with us. She's never going to drive a car. She's never going to get married, you know, but we can take care of her. And she provides a shining light for our whole family, for the whole community, as far as that goes. But there are a lot of families that have kids in different settings and different levels of needs that end up in homes. And I've started, as you know, the last couple of years more, I've done more research and looked into, and Angie and I have never even had a conversation about this, but the adult group home scene is scary, to say the least.
Really?
Yeah. So that's kind of going to be, for me, the next thing that I try to focus on is how can we do more for these people, special needs, as they get older in life? And what can we do for them to try to help them be productive citizens? But if we can't, how can we improve their life if they're have to be put in homes? And to me, that should be a last resort. But same issues we're talking about: not enough teachers, not enough special education teachers, not enough support staff at these homes and things. A lot of these, you know, people are at too. So I guess my point is, and y'all chime in on it, it just doesn't end. It doesn't. There's no, with this diagnosis, there's no finish line. There's no checkered flag because it goes on forever. We still have issues with Haley. I'm sure you still have issues with Bailey, and it's a battle that's never ever going to end. Do you have any experience or talk to anybody that has other kids, maybe older than Bailey, what they're dealing with or how they handle those things?
Yeah, I talk to, people often, and we get a lot of feedback, with that through our organization. And, all school-based services should be provided until the age of 22. But like you said, so many people think, okay, these are children, but there's adults walking around, whether they have an autism diagnosis or not, because things kind of were, later starting, I feel like, with the autism diagnosis. So there's probably a lot of older individuals who have autism but were never actually diagnosed. So, or other disabilities. And there's just, I hear a lot of stories about regression. You talk about Haley, and she's up and she's moving and she's working. So those skill sets are, continuing to even develop, where a lot of people who don't have those opportunities, like you're talking about, we're blessed too that we're able to provide that education for Bailey and provide a support for him at school. But there's a statistic out on the golf course today that says that it costs a family $60,000 a year to raise a child with autism. And, that's just probably medical expenses and therapies. That's probably not even providing things like we're providing for our children. So many. So, what support they have, they're depending on that school because that's their only option. But then when they get out of school, what do they do? What do they do? We're blessed in a situation where hopefully Bailey may help, in my husband's business in some aspect. But I see it so much. And I've been approached since we've started our program with Links, and we have our school-based children who we're taking into community. We are getting more and more families approach us saying, my child is 25, I have them home. Could you help us seek employment for my child? And again, that's, and unfortunately a lot of businesses have the mindset that that's a liability on them too. They don't realize what great skills these kids can have and what they can do and what they could really excel at.
Dedication to the job as well. I mean,
absolutely.
Your daughter's dedicated to, you call them chores, but basically working in the same way every day.
Some people.
I have a few people that are on the payroll with us that have been with me for a very long time that came through some it's a group called the Choice Group, and they seek employment for people. And they're like on the job training, and then they check on the employee, like every 30 days, just to make sure you don't have any issues, get you to do like an evaluation on them and things like that. And I have several now that work for me through this group. And I mean, they come to work, they do what
they walk to work.
Some walk to work.
Really?
And I mean, like best employees ever. And then having the job coach, they come in, and if they need to be there for 4 weeks to train them, to get them to do what you need them to do, or 1 week, they do that. So that's been really good. And I do have one that we think might probably be on the spectrum that's working. And so I try to tell people you have to pick your battles with your employees sometimes and situations and stuff, and you have to just learn to work through things and just try to keep training the best you can. You want to give them an opportunity because no one else is going to give them an opportunity, because like you said, most people are scared for the liability reasons, not knowing if they're going to come to work and have a behavior issue or lash out at someone, but for me, the program that I have that I've dealt with in town has been a good group of people to work with. And if they come to me and they have somebody, I never turn them down because I know that they're going to be there with the employee the whole time if I need them to, and check up on them.
Now with F.E.A.T, job training is one of the things that you guys focus on, especially for the graduated student.
That's
with
something
autism?
we started last year. Yes,
That is
program.
amazing. So you're saying though, our state government does not offer that kind of opportunity, either through the IEP or through the appropriate education. That's not a part of what they're teaching or training any autistic student in the public system. Is that fair to say?
I think it really depends probably on the area,
Well, the more affluent areas,
yes,
you probably
the
have
rural
those
communities like ours, no, they don't have those.
Well, she mentioned earlier, providing what they have to provide through the age of 22. I think it's very fair to say that there needs to be more focus and attention all across the Commonwealth of Virginia on creating better programs across the state. Now, there are probably some areas, we're in a rural area. I mean, Senator, you live in one too.
Yes.
But there may be places, maybe in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, whatever, that have excellent programs that give these kids that become young adults better opportunities. But around Emporia, Greensville, Mecklenburg, Brunswick, place like this that we live, I think it's very safe to say we need to try to provide schools more resources to be able to afford the type of programs, individualized type programs that these kids need. And there needs to be more planning and opportunities in place for these same kids that grow into adults. Because most of the kids that we deal with, I know Haley's the same way. She wakes up every morning at 6:30, showers, puts her clothes on, and busts in our room every morning, smiling from ear to ear, ready to take on the day and go to work.
Because of the routine, right?
Yeah, but it really is a perspective thing for me, because when I think I've got problems, or when I think I got things that bother me, I'm like, look at this child. She is in here ready to go to work, and she loves everybody. She hugs everybody. Mm-hmm. She doesn't see, hate, embrace anything divisive. She just, but
she's hilarious.
And don't be late.
She's sweet.
She's ready to go at 8 o'clock.
Oh, really?
And you're doing anything at 8:05, you're going to be in trouble.
Well, I'm perennially late, so we're going to have to work through that. But I love her to death, and she's so social with everybody that I've encountered, and especially I love when you get her on FaceTime, and then it's, hi, Miss Haley, hi, Mr. Bill, and we have those conversations, and it's just great to watch. And then he posts a video on Facebook going through the drive-thru, or those kind of moments with Haley, and it's wonderful.
Well, she lifts people up. And I know Bailey, when I'm around Bailey or I see stuff on Facebook, he's always smiling.
Yes, he is. He's a very happy child. Most of the time we all have our moments, but others seem to enjoy being around him. When Rebecca, our newest aide, started working with him, and she'd never been in the school setting before. She was a recreational therapist when she came to us, and she said, Bailey is popular at school. Like, everybody knows him. He speaks to everybody. Everybody speaks to him. And same thing, what he was saying, Bailey wakes up every morning and jumps right up. He knows his routine, what he's got to do, get dressed, brush his teeth, take his medicine, and he's ready to go to school. I never once hear him say, I don't want to go to school today.
Really?
Haley's funny. She so she gets up in the morning. She has to go through and open all the blinds. And she's got her, routine about things. And then when we get home at night, whether she comes home with me or comes home with Andy, she goes right to the kitchen, to the bedrooms, and closes the blinds. They're all a certain way. Everything is a routine. But Bill mentioned earlier, like, special gifts. I'll tell one story about Haley, and if you have one, because I'm sure you've got something like this with Bailey too. Haley started to go with me probably 10 years ago to Pocono, to the race. So the first time I talked her into going with me, we went and we would go stay at the Great Wolf Lodge at Pocono. And then while I was working during the day, Motor Racing Outreach would take care of her during the day. And they had little church programs, and then they did arts and crafts and all that. So she would go. We came back. Didn't think much of it. 12 months later, I said, Haley, you want to go with me to Pocono? Yeah. She go. So we get in the car. And when you're traveling, she's got her tablet or iPad, and she's got her headphones on. She's in her own little world, kind of. So we're traveling up through West Virginia, driving to Pocono, just me and Haley. And then all of a sudden, Haley pulls her headphone off the side of her ear, and she says, Daddy, stop 274. I said, what, Haley? She said, stop 274. So I looked, and I start seeing the road signs, 269, 270, 271. So I get off exit 274 and pull down, and realized once I got down there that it was a Hardee's with a Playland that we had stopped at last year. And she remembered the exit number. And so I'm like, this kid in her own way is a genius. And we can go to the lake or go to the beach, and we may not have been in a year, and she remembers every DVD that's in each drawer in each bedroom at Nag's Head. It's like so many things she struggles with, but it's like a photographic, type memory. What else do you, Angie, remember or see about Haley on a daily basis like that?
Well, she's so cute every morning. We can hear her coming because she's like speaking to all the dogs because, we've got so many. So she's like, hey, girls. We got all girls. So you can hear her before she even gets to the bedroom. But she's happy every day. I mean, when the kids are going to school, you'd have Cora. She'd come in there and she'd be like dragging and I'm hungry. And, Naomi's coming there, probably trying to find a way not to have to do something before she goes to school. And Haley would always come in happy, ready to go, getting her stuff together and ready to get on the bus. And she's been like that all the time. And if Haley is not happy, if something is not going good for her, you will know it. And if she's sick, you will know it. Most people, can kind of just go day to day and kind of get by with like a little cold or something like that and just kind of roll with it. But Haley either is sick or she's Haley. So, and we hardly ever see her sick. But if she's sick, she's sick. But she's happy every day and wants to go to work, loves going to work. And even if we go to Richmond now, she knows the exits that we used to stop at coming home from going to the facing school because I drove her every day for 2.5 years. Wow. So, I didn't want to that was one thing that is offered as a parent when they were sending, and they still send kids to the facing school, but they would send like a transportation. And I'm like, I'm not going to send my 5-year-old daughter in a vehicle with someone I don't know. So I drove her for 2.5 years, and she always wanted to stop at this McDonald's coming back right there at Willis Road on 95. And she always wanted to get her a milkshake and like some chicken nuggets or something on her way home. And she still to this day, if we go that way up 95, she knows that exit and she'll want to stop there if she's hungry. But she's a happy. One other thing too that is a special thing is just talking about when the kids get older, and Hermie was talking about a group home and things like that. And I think as a parent, one thing that you worry about is one day when you're not here, what's going to be of my child. And so, we're sitting here going, absolutely, we don't want our child to be in a group home. We want somebody to take care of her. Well, I think it's pretty obvious for us to know that Cora and Naomi are going to be there for Haley as long as they are still here, and hopefully, their children. But I think the true statement to us was this past weekend when Cora got married, and she's planning this whole wedding and has, coordinated all these things for us for the last, 18 months. And the moment before we get ready to walk into the reception and be introduced, she turns and looks at Hermie and goes, oh, by the way, Dad, you're dancing twice. And he was like, I am? Why? And she goes, you're going to dance with me, and then you're going to dance with Haley. Well, of course, Haley is standing there because Hermie was escorting her and I in, and Haley was like, oh, no, I'm not dancing. And Cora goes, Haley, I just want you to dance one time with Daddy. And so, Hermie's like, Haley, you're just going to dance with me, and then you'll be all done. So we go out there, and Cora, on her special day that's supposed to be all about her and Cameron, she took the time to coordinate a song that's a very special song. And then I'm sure everybody has seen the video of it on Facebook.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful.
But she wanted Haley
at least she could dance.
to have a special day.
Hermie, you were all left feet, but
yeah,
she danced very nicely.
Yeah, it was special. And it goes back to what we started. It takes the whole family. Mandy, we got to go play some golf, but before we go...
Hold on. See, you always cut me off. I never get to finish my questions, and this is the most important thing, and indulge me as a legislator, and especially with you, what you're dealing with right now, how you look at things based on the experiences that you've had, Angie. When I've been in the legislature, it was a big deal to extend benefits, health insurance benefits, and to make health insurance benefits also apply to educational opportunities for children with autism. Allows them to stay on the plan a lot longer than normal plans do. But after that, we kind of went off the edge and have not really been aggressive in addressing this. We've been aggressive in addressing mental health issues in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but we're not addressing in terms of educational opportunities, issues, training, and those things for those children that have autism, and also to provide state support, because this is what I'm hearing from y'all is we have a real deficiency here that has to be rectified. 1 out of 44 children. I mean, if you take the population of 8 million in the Commonwealth of Virginia, that's a significant amount of citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia that have and are in need of services because they fall within the spectrum. What can the Commonwealth of Virginia do? If I'm a legislator and I have the ability to write a piece of legislation, let's say Hermie's a legislator.
Here we go.
And you have an opportunity to write a piece of legislation. What can we do in the Commonwealth of Virginia as government to make it better for those parents like you, and especially for the parents that may not have had the instrumentalities that allow you to go the extra mile for your child, and you depend on the Commonwealth of Virginia to provide not an appropriate education, but a quality education, the best possible?
I know when, Bailey was diagnosed and we received a plan for him, a service plan, a therapy plan from the physicians, the number one recommendation for us at that time was ABA therapy. And that was, a lot based on his age and preparing him from school and things like that. Well, our insurance didn't cover ABA therapy. It's the number one recommended therapy in the autism world, but insurance didn't cover it. So for us, it was paying out of pocket. And they recommended us having up to 20 hours a week.
And this is not
ABA
offered at the
therapy.
schools, right?
No. And
schools don't offer that?
And, some areas do have ABA therapists that come to school, but unfortunately in our community, our area, we don't have ABA in the schools. And that would be a vital part. And, at that point, ABA wasn't even offered in this area at all. So I drove Bailey, back and forth to Richmond 5 days a week to receive this therapy. Now we do have more opportunities here where companies are coming here, but it's, like you said, the numbers are so high with children that need this service, and they're a wait list months and months and months to get these services. So we're still,
and those first years after a diagnosis are the most critical, the most critical.
And it's so frustrating for a parent, not to have it, we don't have it in our school. We have it in the community, but you're going to wait 10 months before you get it. And like you said, you're sitting there spinning your wheels and watching that vital time for your child to be, engaging in these services just pass by. So it's just really the need for services and then for insurance. And I know, after Bailey completed these services, we did those for a couple years. Insurance did pick it up for us, but then they cut it off at the age of 7, And we were Bailey hasn't done ABA therapy in years, but we were just discussing with a psych a couple weeks ago, what, as Bailey approaches puberty, things are going to change, and guess what? We may need some type of service to intervene again and help us through some of these things, whether it be behavioral, whether it be ABA. And so, there's not age cutoff. Again, like we were talking about with the school systems thing goes on, there's need for services. Bailey is, been doing speech services for 9 years, and guess what? We're still doing it. But insurance only covers 20 sessions a year. Guess what? That's not even half. If you got them once a week, that's not even half the year.
And that's if you have insurance.
That's
there are
if you
many
have insurance.
families that don't have insurance
absolutely.
coverage.
Kids should be getting speech therapy 2 and 3 days.
Exactly.
ABA, speech therapy. Angie, what do you think? I mean, how can we in the Commonwealth of Virginia make this better for parents and for our students, for our children, our greatest natural resource here in Virginia?
I agree with Mandi on the insurance part, because I remember when I was taking Haley and getting the additional speech therapy, we were paying for all of that out of pocket. And sometimes that was $180, $200 a pop when you went to these, private practices to see these therapists. But you knew when you went there, you were there with the child and you were seeing the services and getting the services. And the same thing with the ABA. That's what we did with Haley. That's what, the Facing School, that was what their therapy was the ABA therapy. And they trained, the other thing is that they trained you as the parent on ABA at the Facing School. And then also, they provided 30 hours a week at the Facing School for Haley, and then the additional 10 hours a week
we had to bring someone in our home to do it with her after school, not you as the parent, because they wanted it to be another educator doing it with her at home. We paid for that out of pocket. So, anything, the way I look at it, anything you can do to help these parents with these expenses is going to be beneficial to them.
And look, there's always going to be facilities that families that have the resources can take their kids to. The Faison School, which was great for Haley, worked great for us. But I think we need to focus on providing, I think to your point in certain ways, Senator, providing resources to the public school systems.
Yes.
And putting a plan in place a system of checks and balances in place that for X amount of kids in that community, so many teachers available to do these types of things, because you can't just put a plan in place either and let it go. There has to be ongoing oversight, as you know, with programs like that. But I view it as, you put your business hat on for a second, the more work and resources and therapies we can give these kids at a young age, hopefully the less we would need to support them later in life. If we can put them on the right path early, when you get to the teen years and to the 20s, to the 22, if you invest early, maybe we have better luck later rather than...
You're talking more independence, less dependency.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay.
Sure. That's got to be it. But I'm saying we need to focus on the school systems and helping them have the resources, the funding, the structure, the teachers, and there should be no reason why in the Commonwealth of Virginia that we can't provide, to your point, not just the appropriate, but the best opportunities for these kids that are going to grow up to be adults in this Commonwealth of Virginia. And as you said, when Haley was diagnosed, it was 1 in 500. Now 1 in 44.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So every day you're coming in contact, whether you know it or not, with a child or a young adult or an adult that is on that spectrum.
And it's not just the child, 1 out of 44. It's the families. It's the brothers and sisters. It's the mom and dads. It's the grandparents. This community is growing exponentially, and we need to pay attention.
Yep.
And we need to be there because that's what government's function is. We want liberty and justice and freedom, but there are those that we have taken that obligation to care for.
That's right.
And we can't let them fall through the cracks. And Haley and Bailey are wonderful, wonderful children, and you are wonderful, wonderful parents. But we need to help those that may not have those kind of opportunities that you two have had. And so certainly I want you to think after we talk here today, if you think of a good piece of legislation that we can write and put in place that's going to help those families. I'm thinking right now, and you've got my mind working, and it's legislative drafting time, and the education system, how do we get more specific, especially with the ABA stuff, and then training. How do we make them more independent, as you've just said, less dependent, more freedom, so that you as parents, when you've done everything you possibly can, are going to be trusting and knowing that they're going to be fine.
These kids are proud. They're proud kids, and they want to do the right things, and they've got a lot of qualities that are better than other people in certain ways. We just got to,
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we've got to package that and help them with the things they need the help with, and I think a lot of they'll be on their way. That's what we got to.
Well, God bless you both. Thank you for your time. It's a very important issue. It's now a very important issue to me. Awareness is not just awareness. It's not that we're just aware. What do we do now? And so tell us a little bit about F.E.A.T as we're going out here so people can go on your website, contact you, make donations, have you be a part of their lives when they're raising their autistic children. Tell us how we can get in touch with you. Sure.
Our website is www.ssva for Southside Virginia, so ssvafeat.org. We have our Facebook page, Families Embracing Autism Together. You can just Google us, look us up, find our email address, phone numbers, contacts, and reach out. All this stuff comes directly to me, so I'm there to listen. And we've got a great board who is very supportive and very knowledgeable and there to support as well. Thank you. And thank you for having us at the golf tournament today. Thank you, Hermie, for inviting me. Very important. Everyone who's listening to this, open your hearts, open your minds. Let's attack this issue. Let's solve it. As a community, we should. We have that obligation to our children here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I think we can do even better, but with organizations like yours,
You're doing the Lord's work, and we appreciate you greatly. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great podcast. I think this is so informative and so necessary. I appreciate everyone listening. I'm Virginia State Senator Bill Stanley, and I'm leaning right.
And I'm Hermie Sadler. I'm turning left. Leaning right and turning left, as always, is powered by F.E.A.T. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
God bless you all.
Listen, man, I know it sounds too good to be true, but I want you to just do me a favor and run on over to savewithconrad.com. Get yourself a quick quote. My man Andy M. just left us a 5-star review over at conradreviews.com, and he had this to say. The effort and communication from Josh was above and beyond. We ran into several unexpected hiccups along the way, but Josh kept us informed and kept looking for options to get things done. In the end, we were still able to refinance to a 15-year loan, where we're going to be able to pay it off in 10. And we took enough cash out to pay off our credit cards, my truck loan, and even buy my wife her very first new vehicle. We're going to save over $500 a month from what we would have been paying without the refinance. We can't thank everyone enough. Now, guys, that right there is a win-win-win situation. Let me explain. Over the last couple of years, your house is probably worth more than ever. Now, what you do with that equity is up to you. And what I'm going to recommend is we do what our man Andy did. Andy took himself from a 30-year loan down to 15 years, but he's planning to pay it off in 10. Now, how can he afford to do that? We got rid of all his credit card debt, just like that. We got rid of his truck loan, and we even got him enough cash to get his wife a new vehicle. The result? Cheaper monthly payments. How does that happen? How do you get a new car, pay off a truck, and get rid of your credit cards and cut years off your loan? You go to savewithconrad.com. We're going to get you cheaper monthly payments, and how's this for starters? No house payments for the next 2 months. That's right. You can skip your next 2 payments. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. And buddy, if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. And here's the best part. We don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. Now, I don't care if you were late here or there. Maybe you had a bankruptcy back in the day. Maybe you were late on a credit card. We're going to help you figure out how to get in the situation that your family needs now and long term. We want to be your mortgage advisor for life at savewithconrad.com.